Chapter 562. You're the thing, idiot. The bird demon flapped its wings, and its black eyes flashed, as if two balls of flames were rising in its eyes. At this moment, the bird demon's aura changed. Although it was still at the 6th level of the spirit awakening realm, from a certain perspective, this bird demon's aura was actually on par with Lin Yuan's. Even Lin Yuan's dragon's might was suppressed by a lot. A 6th level spirit awakening realm demonic beast was on par with a 1st level mountain lord demonic beast in terms of aura. If this matter was told to others, no one would believe it. If that 1st level mountain lord demonic beast was Lin Yuan, who had been in the limelight recently, others would think that even if it was a story, it couldn't be so ridiculous, right? But the truth was that this strange scene was indeed happening in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan looked at the bird demon with a complicated expression in his heterochromatic vertical pupils, but there was more pity in his eyes. He sneered. It seems that the hatred of my previous life has helped me. At least I have learned to be in awe of the existence that is stronger than me before I have enough strength. But before you came to this world, you didn't seem to have been beaten by society? As his voice fell, the bird demon's eyes suddenly flashed with fear. In the next moment, without waiting for the bird demon to speak, a powerful force erupted and firmly squeezed its body. The threat of death awakened it from its shock, and it wanted to flap its wings desperately to struggle. However, in the next moment, the lake water wrapped in Lin Yuan's demonic power tightened again, squeezing the bird demon directly into a pile of meat paste. A white light swept out from the meat paste and rushed toward the deeper parts of the monster beast forest at an extremely fast speed. However, the speed of the white light was very fast, but in front of the current Lin Yuan, it was still as slow as a funny scene in a slow-motion movie. With a flash of his figure, Lin Yuan, who was in the lake, rose into the air. A large amount of lake water slid down the black flood dragon's body, smashing the surrounding grass until it bent down. He was like an insufferably arrogant king, making people not dare to look directly at him. Lin Yuan's mouth opened slightly, and a trace of black viscous liquid flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In one breath, the liquid turned into a black arrow, accurately hitting the white light that was trying to escape. Then, there was a series of sha-sha-sha gnawing sounds. In about 4 or 5 breaths, the black liquid slowly swelled, and then condensed into a sparrow-sized bird. "Tell me, where did you come from?" Lin Yuan looked at the black bird in front of him with a mocking gaze and asked. Replying to the Lord of the Underworld, "I came from Earth. I don't know how I came to this world, but when I woke up, I found that I had become a bird. Then, there was an existence in my consciousness that called itself the system that told me that it would help me evolve into the most powerful creature in the universe. I was very excited at the time, thinking that the protagonist's treatment in those novels had happened to me. After that, for about 2 months, I followed the system's guidance and found this place to nest. At first, I was very resistant, because my instincts told me that this place belonged to a very powerful predator, and if I stayed here, it was very likely that I would die. But the system told me that if I didn't nest here, it would remove the binding with me, and let me live in this world full of demonic beasts and cultivators as an ordinary bird. After living here for about 2 months, the predator that brought me fear in the beginning didn't come back to this nest at all, and I began to slowly adapt to life here. The spiritual energy in other places was not as rich as here, and I could only gain 1 or 2 attribute points from hunting in those places, or even nothing, and it was not as fast as cultivating here. And after such a long time, that powerful predator didn't come back, so I thought that it had died in the mouth of other beasts, and lived here with peace of mind. Until just now, when I felt your aura, I subconsciously wanted to escape, but the system gave me a strange mission. It asked me to go to that cave and take out an unknown herb, and then took the initiative to provoke you. I thought that the system wouldn't let the protagonist die, so I had the courage to provoke the Lord of the Underworld. The black bird spoke very slowly, as if it was afraid that Lin Yuan couldn't hear it clearly if it spoke too quickly. The talent of the underworld's black water was very terrifying. Regardless of strength, bloodline, or anything else, as long as one entered the underworld's black water, they would become an undead that couldn't be killed. Only the master of the underworld's black water had the right to destroy these undead existences. There was also some related knowledge that one would naturally know after becoming an undead in the underworld's black water. There was no possibility of resisting Lin Yuan, and even the most unyielding undead had to unconditionally obey Lin Yuan's every order. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, and with a thought, the black bird in front of him exploded into a pool of black liquid and returned to Lin Yuan's body. The system was suspected to be the existence of the heavenly Tao. Its target might be Hongjun, or it might be the human king who had mastered the power of science and technology in the world of his previous life. It might even be both. It might want to create a world similar to the one before Hongjun stole the heavenly Tao. And no matter if its opponent was Hongjun or the human king, they were not existences that could be easily resisted. Therefore, the heavenly Tao would not choose to put all its eggs in one basket. At that time, in the countless worlds separated from the chaos, there were countless hosts selected by the system. For example, the bloodline transaction that Lin Yuan had conducted before might have been a transaction with other system hosts. The appearance of another host selected by the system was not enough to surprise Lin Yuan. However, in the original conception of the system, it was impossible for these hosts to meet before they had enough strength. Moreover, a world might not be able to support a single host. Placing multiple hosts in a single world was undoubtedly a waste of resources. This bird demon host that should not have appeared was obviously a warning from the system to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan did not follow the system's plan and walk on the path of the gods worshipped with the power of incense. He did not even listen to the system's advice and began to use the underworld's black water, which was listed as a serious threat, to absorb the sky demon to strengthen his own strength. However, the system did not have any means to punish Lin Yuan, and could only waste its power and time to create this bird demon host to warn Lin Yuan that Lin Yuan was not its only choice, and that it had better be obedient and so on. Whoever believed such words would be a fool. Lin Yuan grinned, and a look of ridicule flashed across his heterochromatic vertical pupils. The system was very strong, and suspected to be the existence of the heavenly Tao. It could easily crush him with a burst of power. However, for a host like him, the system did not need to be too afraid. Chapter 563. What was the system? It was the heavenly Tao. What was the heavenly Tao? It was the rules. Even if the rules had their own will, it was still an unchangeable rule. Just like Lin Yuan, even if he had a human soul, he was still a black Jiao. It did not mean that he could be a human just because he felt that he was a human. Similarly, an existence that was a rule naturally could not go against the rules. As a system, it could not issue any task to Lin Yuan that could not be completed with Lin Yuan's current ability. Even if the task of provoking Lin Yuan, such as the bird-type demonic beast, seemed to be a death sentence, the punishment could not be too high. Whether it used a gentle method or directly refused to carry out the task, the host must be able to bear the price. On the other hand, the bird-type monster's mission in Lin Yuan's nest was not very difficult because Lin Yuan was not in the monster forest at that time, and even Badu was transferred to the northern frontier to participate in the battle. It could even be said that it was a mission that gave rewards. The punishment for failing this mission could be set very high. For example, the system could unbind the host, erase the host, and so on. At the beginning of the mission to fight the mutated blood spirit, the system gave out rewards and punishments, but when the difficulty of the mission exceeded the scope, the system quickly changed the requirements of the mission. This was a typical example of following the rules. The system could not let Lin Yuan die for no reason, so Lin Yuan had to maintain respect for the system, not fear. Of course, the system could also spend a large price to cultivate another host in this world, and provide more resources to let him grow faster. This was the meaning that the system wanted to express to Lin Yuan when the bird-type monster appeared in front of Lin Yuan. It did not make meaningless verbal threats, but put one thing into practice. It was like a person threatening you over the phone, and a person threatening you with a knife at your waist. It was a different feeling. Actually, even if you nurture a new host, it won't be a threat to me. No matter where you hide it, I can easily find it. I'm very clear that the reason why that bird and I became demonic beasts was not because you wanted us to become demonic beasts, but because you only have the ability to make us demonic beasts. Otherwise, you wouldn't have chosen to start with demonic beasts in the Sky Martial Continent. Since that's the case, your new host will either be in the Hengduan mountain range or the Endless Sea domain. Furthermore, with me in front, your new host won't have much room to show off. It won't be able to reach my level. Even if it can, the other forces won't allow an existence like me to rise. Besides, there's still me. Will I watch it develop without doing anything? After thinking through his thoughts, Lin Yuan felt less fear in his heart, and even his tone had a hint of a smile. The system was still playing dead, as if everything that happened before had nothing to do with it. After a long while, Lin Yuan was still standing in the same place, and his heterochromatic vertical pupils revealed a playful brilliance. "What do you want?" The system's words slowly appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. The smile in Lin Yuan's eyes deepened, and he said indifferently, "I don't want to be your puppet, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to cooperate with you. You need a strong person to kill Hongjun for you, and I also need your strength to grow quickly. There is no conflict between us, is there?" The system was silent for a moment. "Tell me." The system typed another line of words. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said coldly, "Don't try to trip me up, and don't think of leading me down that path. Those people on the investiture of the gods, what happened to them hundreds and thousands of years later, I can still remember it clearly." The system did not remain silent this time, but it stood up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Lin Yuan even felt his entire sea of consciousness shake, and a wave of dizziness hit him like a tide. After about 5 or 6 breaths, the system finally finished venting, and slowly typed a line of word. "It's not rare to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, but you should also know that this kind of thing can only be done after the goal is achieved. What do you think the price I paid for cultivating the gods on the investiture of the gods for thousands of years? Then, do you think that just letting the primordial world fragment that I live in leave the primordial world's main body is comparable to the price I paid to create a god role, nurture the power of a human immortal, and fight against Hongjun?" Lin Yuan, for a moment, he could not find a reason to refute, but he could only remain silent. But to be honest, there were many famous people on the investiture of the gods, and the price to cultivate such a huge force was much more terrifying than cultivating Lin Yuan to his current level. At least, Lin Yuan was not confident that he could take a blow from those people who were at the bottom of the investiture of the gods at this moment. Such a huge price only allowed him to temporarily escape from Hongjuan's evil clutches, and then abandon him? This obviously did not make sense. If the power of incense was really as Lin Yuan had expected, and it was something that the heavenly axiom controlled those gods, then these gods should be absolutely loyal to the heavenly axiom, so why were they wiped out by the heavenly axiom, and all of them were wiped out? It's the will of the human king. These 5 simple words made Lin Yuan vaguely see the heavenly axiom gnashing its teeth. Although the human king Dxin was destroyed by Hongjun and I, his will was still passed down. Who do you think said things like, "The heavenly axiom is heartless, and treats all things as straw dogs and, if the saints don't die, there will be more thieves"? These words lack some boldness, and even if they are at the tip of the tongue, can they be said casually? The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth rose slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "Very good, everyone has their own plans. You want to eliminate the human king and Hongjun, and create a new world that is ruled by the heavenly axiom, without saints. Hongjun wants to completely control the heavenly axiom, and make himself the ruler of the world. The human king is more straightforward. He wants to exclude the existence of you and Hongjun, and create a world without legends. Then what about you? What do you want?" The system did not deny Lin Yuan's words, but slowly tapped out its doubts. Lin Yuan opened his bloody mouth, tilted his head and asked, "What do I want? Could it be that you didn't hear what that bird demon called me? Lord of the underworld. Heaven, earth, and man. This was the foundation of a perfect world that could not be changed, or it could be said that the heavens and earth were on the side of the world. They were not made up of the same world, but had forcefully integrated themselves into another world. For example, the Tianwu continent did not have the heavenly court, nor did it have the underworld. It could not be considered a complete world, and this world lacked the existence of immortals, gods, ghosts, and monsters. Lin Yuan's appearance could be a way for the world to complete itself. Chapter 564. How arrogant! The system still used words to express itself, but Lin Yuan could clearly feel its disdain. In fact, if it were Lin Yuan himself, if he did not have the dark water talent, he would not believe that he could become the Lord of the Underworld. After all, the Lord of the Underworld did not only refer to the members of the Underworld system. In the Underworld, there was no Underworld that belonged to them. If the souls captured by their subordinates did not have a world where they could reincarnate, they would never be considered as the Lord of the Underworld. Even if they reached the level of the black and white impermanence, they would only be high-level workers. They were far from being considered as lords. In the myths of the past, the status of the underworld did not seem to be high. It was as if when one reached the level of Sun Wukong, one could casually treat the underworld as nothing. But in fact, that was not the case. When the power of the underworld erupted, it was much more terrifying than the heavenly court and spirited mountain. It was just that the underworld had never liked to show its power. It could also be said that there were too many forces that wanted to reach out to the underworld. Everyone was just confronting each other. No one could think of turning the underworld into their own power. Everyone had their own responsibilities and territories. Back then, when Sun Wukong wreaked havoc in the underworld and tampered with the Book of Life and Death, it sounded very powerful to ordinary people. But in fact, it was just that. The people that Sun Wukong fought in the underworld were basically workers. The monkey did not encounter any of the truly powerful existences. Moreover, the monkey did not change many of the Book of Life and Death. Even the monkey descendants of Mount Huagua and Mount Huagua did not have any bad influence on the monkey's world. Moreover, the underworld included so many worlds. Making a big fuss over such a small matter would only benefit others. That was why the monkey was safe and sound. However, the funny thing was that the Book of Life and Death was not a treasure that could defy the heavens and change one's fate. It was just a roster that recorded when and who should die, how long they had lived and how long they should live, and so on. Even if this kind of thing was torn 100 times, it was just something that could be rewritten. It was not as ridiculous as what Sure Men had boasted about when he wanted to bring the monkey up to the stage. After changing the Book of Life and Death, other than the monkey himself, who could be considered as a powerful demon king, who became the victorious fighting Buddha and was received by Buddhism, there was no other powerful monkey demon in the Flower Fruit Mountain. If the underworld wants you dead, then you must die. Unless you can force the entire underworld to bow their heads, otherwise, even if you tear the underworld's Book of Life and Death into shreds, those damned fellows will still be taken away by the underworld's workers when the time comes. Don't want to go to the underworld? That works too. Destroy yourself. Apart from having one's soul scattered and having one's body and soul destroyed, Nothing could escape the fate of going to hell. What a person reincarnated into was decided by the underworld. Even the reincarnation of an immortal, the time of reincarnation, and what identity they would have after reincarnation were all under the jurisdiction of the underworld. Although the speed at which immortals could cultivate again was not slow, if someone were to deliberately prevent them from cultivating, they would end up with their immortal spirit dispersing after one lifetime. In the next reincarnation, they would be immortal through and through. Therefore, it was not that the cake of the underworld was not delicious, but that this cake was too delicious, so everyone wanted to have a bite. Gods, immortals, shamans, and demons all had their own forces in the underworld. Even Buddhism, who came later, had a bodhisattva who made a great vow and swore that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. After that, he firmly occupied a place in the underworld. Other than these abnormally powerful existences since the beginning of time, don't think that humans have no influence in the underworld. On the contrary, the influence of humans in the underworld was simply terrifying. Jean Byron had to go through hundreds of millions of tribulations to become the celestial emperor, and all the gods in the world who violated the heavenly law would be struck down to the mortal world to become beasts or humans who had to undergo tribulation to cultivate again. Only after completing their merit could they return to the heavenly court to become immortals. Just by looking at Jean Byron's actions, one could see that his influence in the underworld was probably so great that it made one's hair stand on end. Even if other forces did not pay a certain price, they would not be able to interfere with these reincarnated immortals. It was not difficult for Lin Yuan to become the lord of the underworld in this incomplete world, but the difficult part was that once the underworld appeared in this world, the underworld of this world would be connected to the main body of the underworld. Although in Lin Yuan's territory, no matter who it was, they would not be able to interfere with the operation of this world without Lin Yuan's consent, but those famous big shots who had been famous for a long time would not allow a young lord of the underworld to appear. Lin Yuan might even die without knowing why. Since Pan Gu opened the sky, how much time had passed in the world's evolution? Even the heavenly axiom itself did not know. However, one thing was certain: the division of power in the underworld had always been very clear. Other than the two supreme positions of the great sacred emperor equaling heavens and the great emperor of the Bain necropolis, the ghost emperors of the 5 directions, the 6 heavenly guardians of the Rahu tribe, the 10 kings of hell, and the remnants of the liches from ancient times were the only ones who had made great vows. The other forces could not interfere with the affairs of the underworld at all. Even Hong Jun could not do anything about it. Unless he was willing to take a huge risk and enter the underworld personally, then directly flatten these old forces, no matter who he sent, they would be killed by the combined forces of many forces. However, the heavenly axiom still had its own will. If Hong Jun dared to slack off, the heavenly axiom's counterattack was not something that a mere saint like him could withstand. With Lin Yuan's personality, even if he brought the underworld into the underworld, it would not infringe on the interests of the other forces. At most, they would not touch Lin Yuan. However, as the system who had watched Lin Yuan walk step by step until today, it knew very well that Lin Yuan was not the kind of person who would be willing to confront others for thousands of years. As long as he accumulated enough power, he would definitely stir up chaos in the underworld. Let's not talk about how the underworld would fall into chaos and all the other worlds would fall into chaos or something like that. To be honest, the heavenly axiom felt that the current situation in the underworld was quite good. Although it could not reach into the underworld, at least that fellow Hong Jun could not reach into the underworld either. It's not that big of a claim, because I do have the confidence to do so. Lin Yuan coiled his flood dragon body together and sneered. Apart from the great god Pan Gu, no one else has the ability to create a new world. Everything in the underworld has formed its own system. It's just that a group of powerful existences have occupied the underworld and called themselves the underworld gods. In reality, their biggest role is to maintain the stability of the underworld, guide souls into the underworld, and capture ghosts who have fled to other worlds. The rest of the matters can be done by the operation of the underworld itself. At this point, Lin Yuan changed the topic. Like an unsheathed sharp sword, he growled, "But I am the Styx." Chapter 565. The war in the north had been going on for such a long time, and they had even annexed some of the sky demons' spiritual bodies. Now, Lin Yuan's nether-realm black water talent had made considerable progress. If he released all of it, although it could not compare to the endless netherworld river, it could at least fill up a pond that was more than 10 meters high. In time, it would not be a problem to merge into the netherworld river, or even replace it. The netherworld river was indeed vast, but it had never had a clear master. Even the famous Meng Po only took water from the netherworld river to boil soup. As for the so-called ferrymen of the netherworld river, they were just people whose evil karma had not been eliminated. They knew that they could not beat the bridge of helplessness, so they could only ferry their souls to the other side according to the will of the underworld to accumulate achievements for themselves and fight for a chance to be reincarnated. These ferrymen of the netherworld river might not even be able to protect the passengers on their ships, let alone the master of the netherworld river. Compared to those who called themselves the gods of the underworld, Lin Yuan, who was qualified to control the netherworld river, was indeed more qualified to be the master of the underworld. After all, those who struggled in the endless river of the underworld were evil spirits from all over the universe. They, whose evil karma had not been eliminated, were not existences that the bridge of helplessness could bear. Therefore, when they crossed the bridge of helplessness, they fell into the endless netherworld river one after another. In a long time that was almost endless, they gradually became distorted and crazy. They did everything they could to trick the souls that had just entered the underworld into the netherworld river to suffer together with them. The only one who could give them relief was the master of the netherworld river, who should have existed but had never appeared. Those crazy souls from all over the universe were willing to give up everything for the simple word relief. Regardless of whether Lin Yuan's punishment for them was to be reincarnated or their souls destroyed, as long as they were not allowed to continue soaking in the netherworld river for eternity, they were even willing to show madness and evil to the fullest for any of Lin Yuan's thoughts. Then, happy cooperation? Happy cooperation. The two of them quickly reached a consensus. The heavenly axiom was actually not that easy to talk to. But then again, Lin Yuan was indeed the most outstanding host it had cultivated so far. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan was not satisfied with being its puppet. But rather than wasting a lot of resources and time to fight with Lin Yuan, it was better to let the two of them become true partners, as Lin Yuan had said. As for whether or not both sides could get along peacefully after achieving their goals, that would depend on everyone's means. No one could guarantee that Lin Yuan wouldn't want to become the second Hong Jun. No one could guarantee that it would be able to escape from Hong Jun's hands again if they were to do it again. However, the world of adults had always been so cruel. As long as they could reach an agreement on benefits, any conflict could be temporarily put aside. In any case, based on the current situation, Lin Yuan wasn't a threat to it yet. Ding. Congratulations, host, you have successfully unlocked the incense stick template function. Sacrifice. Subfunction name. Sacrifice, effect. Your believers can offer you offerings, and the offerings will be converted into incense power according to their value. Note 1. This method doesn't require the sacrificer to be your believer, but if you accept offerings from non-believers, the incense power you receive will be reduced by 20%. Note 2. Sacrifice isn't worship. As a god, you have to give something in return, and must give the sacrificer something of corresponding value. Damn, I'm AF * King Expert. Lin Yuan took a deep breath. The devout worship of Lin Yuan by believers was a spontaneous act. Lin Yuan didn't have to pay any price, and Lin Yuan could generate incense power every day for the incense stick template's various subfunctions. It was precisely because devout believers could only generate incense power that the various Blackwater Dragon King temples in the northern frontier didn't provide Lin Yuan with a single bit of incense power. However, this sacrificial model was much simpler and more crude. Although the believers provided more incense power, the existence of non-believers could still provide incense power to Lin Yuan. It was just that the nature of the offering had changed. From a believer's sincere love for a god, it was downgraded to a mutually beneficial transaction between both sides. In ancient times, the human race was weak. The various tribes worshipped the exotic beasts of the mountains and seas as totems. They offered sacrifices to the exotic beasts regularly, and the tribesmen themselves would obtain certain benefits. For example, when they sacrificed a bear to pray for strength, the sacrificer would obtain the strength of at least one tiger. When you face a sacrificer who craves power, you can deduct the incense power and give it back in the form of attribute points. As long as the value is sufficient, this expenditure can be replaced with other things. Those who crave power can give back gold, silver, and treasures. Because gods are gods after all, you only need to give back. You don't have to do things according to the believer's wishes perfectly. At the same time, you can choose to give more back to the sacrificer, but it can't go below the bottom line. That's the rule. This is the path of the ancient gods. Lin Yuan silently calculated for a moment. Even if it wasn't the primeval times where exotic beasts ran rampant, but the world of his previous life, a bear's strength was 1.6 tons and a tiger's strength was 0.5 tons. In other words, he would have to give back at least 1/3 of the incense power that the sacrificer provided him. It didn't sound as good as purely relying on the believer's power of faith, but the latter was huge. What's more, even gods had to learn to show their divinity in front of people to accumulate believers. Only then could they lie down and eat the believer's power of faith. Take the Western Cross sect for example. In his early years, he was squeezed out of the Greek divine system to the point where he almost couldn't survive. Even his son was nailed to a cross by mortals. Later, he still became one of the top gods. And the most interesting thing was that so many devout believers prayed every day, but he rarely responded. Instead, he let his believers think. If the god didn't respond, it wasn't the god's problem, but their own problem. Their faith wasn't devout enough. If one were to talk about how to be a good god, this should be a textbook existence. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan didn't intend to go down the path of completely relying on believers to obtain the power of incense. After all, the gods that had died in China for thousands of years had proven that this path was a dead end. It was better to learn the path of the ancient gods and simply trade with mortals to get what he needed. Although those totems had also died, it wasn't because they died, but because they were destroyed by other terrifying existences. As long as one was strong enough, the path of the ancient gods wouldn't bring about destruction. Moreover, gods that didn't rely on the power of incense to live wouldn't die even if they lost a single believer. Chapter 566. The sun gradually touched the horizon. The sky gradually darkened. More and more predators began to awaken. Even in the quiet demonic beast forest, from time to time, there would be terrifying bird-type demonic beasts flying across the sky, grabbing one or two beasts that were constantly struggling and howling. After flying to a certain height, these bird-type demonic beasts would loosen their claws and throw their prey down to the ground, smashing them into a pile of meat paste. Then, without any reluctance, they would flap their wings and look for their next prey. In this area where demonic beasts and wild beasts were densely packed, killing was never just because of hunger. Enjoying the pleasure of killing and showing off their strength were things that these low-level demonic beasts would never tire of doing. In front of a bonfire with smoke rising in spirals, 6 blood-stained white-robed youths silently looked at each other. After about 6 or 7 minutes, a large piece of meat roasted over the bonfire began to exude oil. The meat also began to show a golden color and the fragrance began to spread in all directions. However, the 6 of them were not worried that their actions would attract a demonic beast tide. The demonic beast forest was not the Hungduan Mountains. Even if there were demonic beasts, they would not be very strong. Demonic beasts at the 4th or 5th level of the Spirit Awakening realm would be able to occupy a large territory here. Demonic beasts at this level were not much different from normal wild beasts. They were also afraid of things like thunder and fire, so by lighting a bonfire at night, they could avoid unnecessary trouble. With the light of the fire, they would not be ambushed by demonic beasts in the dark environment. As for the fragrance of the roasted meat, it would not attract demonic beasts. After all, what stimulated demonic beasts was the sweet smell of blood in the air. Even if the demonic beasts smelled the smell of roasted meat, they would not be interested. The northern frontier seems to have found something. Recently, they have been increasing the lockdown of the demonic beast forest. A white-robed person used a dagger to cut off a piece of meat and said with a calm expression, "I heard that Su Chong had 2 batches of goods that were detained. Also, he reported back to the higher-ups that there seemed to be demonic beasts roaming around the camp. It feels like he has been targeted." Another white-robed person laughed and narrowed his eyes as he said, "Big Brother Yao Fong, you believe this kind of thing?" In my opinion, Su Chong made up an excuse because he lost 2 batches of goods and was afraid that the higher-ups would be unhappy. Although the Black Jiao was powerful, he didn't have much influence. Only the Beast Kings in the Hungduan mountain range would give him some face. In a place like the demonic beast forest, which was a no-man's land, wouldn't those low-level demonic beasts run away the moment they saw the Black Jiao? Who can it command? Yao Fong was silent for a moment. He tore off a piece of meat and chewed on it. He said vaguely, "No matter what, it's better to be careful. That Black Jiao has gotten to where he is today step by step. No matter how you look at it, he's someone who plans before acting. It's too risky for us to cause trouble in his territory. There are some things that you would rather believe than not. The consequences of being careless are not worse than mine. You should be clear about that." Yao Fong's words caused the other 5 white-robed men to fall into silence. Even the white-robed man who spoke at the beginning revealed a faint trace of fear on his face. The Sky Demon looked powerful, but that was only because the cultivators of the Sky Martial Continent couldn't kill him. At most, they could find a place to seal him. However, this didn't mean that they didn't fear death. That Black Jiao had used some unknown method to block the boat at Wei River. It was unknown what method it used, but it was actually able to make a group of Sky Demon turn against the inferior race. Even the shackles and respect that existed in their bloodline had disappeared. Even the first generation had been forced to flee in a sorry state. What was even more terrifying was that those Sky Demon that Lin Yuan had killed didn't need any form of vessel. They could directly appear in front of the world with their physical bodies. Moreover, they couldn't be killed no matter what. Even if they felt disdain in their hearts, no one dared to ignore the warning from the higher-ups. That Black Jiao had indeed grasped some kind of special method. It had the ability to eliminate the Sky Demon. If it wasn't for the fear of being eliminated by Lin Yuan, how could they be willing to hide in the monster beast forest and cause a ruckus? Hiss hiss hiss, hiss hiss hiss, a strange sound suddenly sounded. Yao Fong seemed to have thrown away the beast meat in his hands the moment he heard the sound. He pulled out the sword at his waist, his face full of vigilance as he looked towards the dark area that couldn't be illuminated by the flames. "Big Brother Yao Fong, it's just a small disturbance. There's no need to be so exaggerated, right?" The white-robed man who spoke earlier laughed. However, his right hand slowly pressed against the hilt of the sword at his waist. Although the other four didn't move, they also covered their weapons with their hands. At the same time, they pricked up their ears to listen to the surrounding movements. Yao Fong didn't say anything. Instead, his expression became more and more serious. He was a sky demon that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Although his bloodline and strength couldn't be compared to the first-generation sky demon, he had honed an ability that others envied through countless battles. Intuition. Yao Fong could clearly feel the malice around him. However, in tens of thousands of years, Yao Fong had never felt such terrifying malice. He could even feel the muscles of his skin trembling. He could also feel the hair all over his body standing up. It was as if there was something extremely terrifying watching him in the darkness. Yao Fong closed his eyes slightly. After a moment, when he opened his eyes again, a red light flashed in his eyes. The world in front of him was a deathly black and white color. Heh! With a bitter laugh, Yao Fong threw down the sword in his hand and muttered helplessly, "It's over." This was a secret technique that he had painstakingly trained based on his intuition. He called it the Eye of Life and Death. In tens of thousands of years, Yao Fong had faced countless terrifying opponents. However, there had never been a time when he had opened the Eye of Life and Death to see the entire world in black and white. Black and white represented death. Only a place with color was the path to life. Yao Fong didn't even know who his opponent was, but he had already sensed that there was no way for them to survive. This suffocating feeling of despair was like a huge rock pressing down on his chest. Yao Fong even felt that he couldn't breathe. "Friend over there, since the preparations have been completed, why don't you show yourself?" Yao Fong's voice was filled with bitterness. In the face of despair, Yao Fong didn't even have the thought of struggling. Hey, big brother Yao Fong, don't joke around." The sky demon that had spoken earlier stood up and said with a serious expression, "We are sky demons. At most, we'll just give up this skin. How can we not even see our opponent and you, then why don't you try and see if you can run?" In the darkness, a mocking voice sounded. Chapter 567. Immediately after, two rays of light flashed in the darkness. One of the sky demon wiped the cold sweat off his forehead, but he clearly didn't want to wait for death like Yao Fong. The red light in his eyes flickered for a moment, and a black shadow with a shriveled face and sharp fangs quietly withdrew from the leather bag. After choosing a direction, his spiritual body rushed out. Whoosh! A sound of something breaking through the air followed closely behind. The five sky demons watched as their spiritual body, which was supposed to be formless, was hit by a black arrow from the forest. The next moment, he screamed and fell to the ground, constantly twisting and convulsing. After 2 to 3 breaths, a Heaven Dipper Realm Level 1 sky demon turned into a ball of black viscous liquid and disappeared into the forest, no longer showing any signs of life. The black droplet that was originally only 2 to 3 centimeters long slowly turned into a ball of black liquid the size of a baby's fist. A sky demon completely disappeared from their senses. Gulp! Yao Fong swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty and said with a bitter smile, "Is this in front of Lord Dragon King of the Northern Frontier?" There weren't many who could deal with a sky demon, and even fewer who could make a sky demon disappear. And to be able to make a sky demon disappear so quickly, there was only one such existence in the entire world. Of course, it wasn't that the cultivators of the Sky Martial Continent were unable to eliminate a sky demon, but the requirements were very strict. They had to be cultivators whose cultivation surpassed the sealed sky demon, and they had to be Taoist or Buddhist disciples. They had to chant the Dharma incantation scriptures that had been passed down since ancient times, and use the natural Great Tao or Buddhist chanting to slowly eliminate the sky demon's evil aura. Only after a long period of time could they grind a sky demon to death. The stronger a sky demon was, the harder it was to eliminate. Some cultivators might not even be able to convert a powerful sky demon full of evil aura even at the end of their lifespan. The cost of this method was too great, and the gains did not make up for the losses. For the Heavenly Gate Guardians, who were already short of manpower, this was a method that they knew was feasible but could not do it. Therefore, some of the sky demon who didn't have a strong evil aura would be sealed in Taoist temples and monasteries to be slowly converted. Those who had committed grave sins would be sent to various dangerous places by the sky demon guardians to be sealed in various places to prevent them from coming out and wreaking havoc in the world. However, as time passed, the seal gradually lost its effect. Furthermore, the sky demon was also rescuing those seniors. Thus, there were more and more disasters involving the sky demon. The guardians of the heavenly gates were also suffering. However, Lin Yuan was a complete anomaly. Although the Heavenly Dipper Realm Sky Demon was not impossible to destroy, according to the relatively gentle method of the Heavenly Gates Guardian, it would take at least 1,000 years to achieve results. However, it was different for Lin Yuan. Good fellow, he could make them disappear in just 2 or 3 breaths. To cultivate to the Heavenly Dipper Realm, even a sky demon would need a few thousand years to do so. In this case, the rate at which Heavenly Dipper Realm Sky Demon was produced might not be as fast as the rate at which Lin Yuan destroyed them. Since you know that I am not to be trifled with, why do you still want to provoke me? Aren't you all despicable? Lin Yuan slowly opened his eyes. His different-colored vertical pupils overflowed with cold light. His movements were so fast that they could not be seen clearly. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the remaining 5 sky demon. Yao Fong was silent for a moment. Then, he cupped his hands towards Lin Yuan and said helplessly, "We are only following orders. Lord Dragon King, please be magnanimous and let us go. I can guarantee that my brothers and I will never set foot in Lord Dragon King's territory again for the rest of our lives. If I violate my oath, I will immediately be struck by lightning and my soul will be destroyed." Although the sky demon race was filled with hostility, they placed great importance on oaths. This was especially so for oaths that were made with their soul aura. Once they violated the oath, the curse would immediately come true. This was one of the restrictions of the sky demon race. Just like how powerful creatures had weaker reproductive abilities and had longer growth cycles, there was no such thing as a perfect species that had no weaknesses. However, Yao Fong's words were half true. He indeed did not have the guts to provoke an existence that had the means to destroy him. However, this did not mean that Yao Fong was afraid of Lin Yuan to the bone. He just did not want to confront this Black Jiao directly. The Sky Martial Continent was so big. Wouldn't it be better for him to go to other places and harm those existences that did not have the means to destroy the Sky Demon? Hence, there was a hidden meaning in his words. After all, he did not say that he would not become enemies with Lin Yuan in the future. Lin Yuan sneered. He tilted his head and asked, "Your words are interesting. First of all, you have to know that although this king and the sky demon race have some grudges, there is definitely no irreconcilable hatred between them. Under these conditions, this king still revealed that he has the ability to destroy your sky demon race. Do you think that this king is the kind of person who abhors evil and is selfless?" This, Yao Fong did not know how to respond. After all, no matter how he responded, it would sound like he was scolding this Black Jiao. Furthermore, this Black Jiao was the one who started it. But then again, it was fine for him to scold himself. If he scolded him, then it would be considered as forming a grudge. Under the eaves, Yao Fong had no choice but to lower his head. The bitter smile on his face deepened. He cupped his hands and said, "Although Lord Dragon King does not care about trifles, he also has the temperament of an ambitious person. If there is no benefit, Lord Dragon King will not say that he will not do things, but he will definitely not do things so decisively. Forgive me for being slow-witted, but I still do not know the meaning of Lord Dragon King's actions. Offending the Sky Demon race to the core, does it benefit Lord Dragon King? After all, they were a race that had reproduced for countless years. Coupled with their immortal and indestructible characteristics, even if the Sky Demon race had not produced a powerhouse at the level of the ancestral dragon or the primordial phoenix, it did not mean that the Sky Demon race was weak and could be bullied. Even if they were a group of pigs, there were still existences like Marshal Tianping who could support them. Lin Yuan had the ability to destroy the Sky Demon, and he was also destroying the Sky Demon. Such an action was indeed offending the Sky Demon to the core. If not for the Heavenly Gate Protector keeping a close watch, there would have already been powerhouses from the Sky Demon's side personally coming to kill Lin Yuan. Phew! Lin Yuan gently exhaled. The Sky Demon that had just been swallowed slowly condensed beside him. He looked coldly at the other 5 Sky Demon. Because you are the food that will make me stronger. Lin Yuan's lips curled up slightly, revealing a wanton smile. In the darkness, more and more Sky Demon controlled by the Nether Realm's black water appeared. They faintly surrounded the 5 normal Sky Demon. Yao Feng's thoughts flashed and he bitterly said, "If this is the case, Lord Dragon King will probably not even give us a chance to speak. Since you have appeared to meet us, you must have a request. Why don't you tell us? As long as it is something we can do, we will not spare any effort." Chapter 568. There's no point in catching small fries like you. Let's get straight to the point. Where is your palace master? Lin Yuan thought for a moment. Combining the memories he obtained from the underwater secret realm, he said in a low voice, "If I'm not wrong, that palace master should be an exceptional talent, right?" As soon as he said this, the expressions of the 5 Sky Demon changed. Although the existence of the Sky Demon was not a secret to the peak-level cultivators of the Sky Martial Continent, and they were even old rivals who had interacted with each other for countless years. However, the origin and system of the Sky Demon had always been a mystery. This was because no Sky Demon would have any association with these low-level creatures of flesh and blood. Unless the other party was like Lin Yuan, a creature who grasped the ability to destroy the Sky Demon, perhaps only then would the Sky Demon feel apprehension. In reality, the Sky Demon could not be considered a type of creature. They could only be considered derivatives, similar to the divine senses Lin Yuan had scattered across the various Blackwater Dragon King temple sculptures. At the beginning, they were the purest evil thoughts of a certain creature. Following the baptism of time, these evil thoughts gradually began to develop their own wills. However, they did not become the heart demons of that creature. Instead, they became the creature's family clan, an arm of support. Although in the future, the divine senses Lin Yuan had scattered out could also develop their own wills, this type of change was not purely due to the baptism of time. Even Lin Yuan might not be able to live for that long, let alone the divine senses he had scattered out. This was a change that would only occur after being influenced by the power of incense for a long time. This also meant that the Sky Demon race's ancestor was something even more powerful than God. It was just that he had never revealed any signs of his existence. He only endlessly created Sky Demons for them to achieve his goals. As for the birth of the first generation, only the old Sky Demon, who was over 10,000 years old, knew that their race was essentially a spiritual body. Only at special times would they have the qualifications to enter the blood pool of the ancestor and obtain a temporary physical body. Only then would they mate with each other and have a very small chance of giving birth to the first-generation Sky Demon. Meanwhile, the first generations were not pure spiritual bodies. Their bodies were mixed with the blood of the progenitor, which was why the Sky Demon had submitted to the first generations, who might not even be as strong as himself. This was the respect that a derivative of the main body had for the main body's bloodline. However, this type of matter had always been the sky demon race's secret. Forget about the inferior races, even the younger, normal sky demons might not know about it. How did Lin Yuan, this Black Jiao, know about the existence of the first generation? What? You don't want to talk? Lin Yuan tilted his head, a cold light flashing through his heterochromatic vertical pupils. Of course, he knew why these sky demons were so shocked. If it wasn't for the inherited memories in the secret underwater realm, he would also know about the special existence of the first generation. However, that was all he knew. How the first generation came to be was still an unsolved mystery. Even the inherited memories only mentioned the existence of the ancestor, but there was no evidence to prove that this line of thought was correct. It was only after Lin Yuan dissected an immortal medicine that he was able to verify part of the statement in the inherited memory. The elixir of immortality that the palace master brought with him was indeed a silver metal ball. After crushing the metal ball, one could see a black liquid sealed by all kinds of incantations and formations. It looked similar to the Nether Realm black water, but the Nether Realm black water did not have its own will. Everything followed Lin Yuan's orders. However, that black liquid was extremely invasive and aggressive. It was like a hungry lion. The moment it was unsealed, it even tried to charge into Lin Yuan's body, as if it wanted to control Lin Yuan. If it wasn't for the Nether Realm's black water, the black liquid might have succeeded. Strangely, when the liquid that looked like the Nether Realm black water touched the Nether Realm black water, it seemed to have met its natural enemy. It actually showed a human-like fear and subconsciously wanted to escape. However, under Lin Yuan's control, the Nether Realm black water was like a python that had caught its prey. It tightly wrapped around the black liquid and directly swallowed it. Originally, Lin Yuan's Nether Realm black water was about 600 to 700 cubic meters. On average, it was about 1 mu of land around him. After swallowing this black liquid, Lin Yuan's Nether Realm black water increased by at least 100 cubic meters. It was a great supplement. It was a pity that the palace master only had one immortality elixir with him. In other words, this was the immortality elixir that could really transform people into inferior demons. The immortality elixirs circulating in the northern region seemed to be on a large scale, but after Lin Yuan took them apart, he found that they were just elixirs refined from ordinary herbs. However, these herbs were soaked in the black liquid before they were refined into elixirs. A black soaking mark was left on the inside of the dregs, but the Nether Realm black water had no interest in it, and Lin Yuan could not feel any negative emotions. It should be that after being refined into medicinal pills, the black liquid lost its activity. However, to be able to make so many defective immortality medicines, it meant that the other had a large amount of black liquid. The black liquid was a great supplement to the Nether Realm black water. Lin Yuan, who could not obtain large amounts of sacrifices in a short time, could only use the Nether Realm black water to increase his power. Therefore, Lin Yuan had an extreme desire for this black liquid. The palace master must have used a large amount of the black liquid to make these defective immortality medicines. This not only threatened Lin Yuan's rule over the northern frontier, but it was also a waste of an excellent resource. Therefore, Lin Yuan boldly guessed that the black liquid here was a part of the Nether River. Was the ancestor a powerful person in the underworld? After all, the black liquid had enhanced the Nether Realm's black water, coupled with the existence of a special spiritual body like the heavenly demon. Lin Yuan was more and more certain about this idea. Although he didn't dare to say that he was 100% sure, he was at least 60% sure. Therefore, Lin Yuan was very interested in the ancestor. He even felt that the other party was a key person for him to control the Nether River. Although the Nether Realm black water controlled hundreds of sky demon, most of them were inferior races. The remaining ordinary sky demon were not weak, but they did not know much. After all, the ancestor had always been careful to hide himself. Even if there was a little risk, he would not send the sky demon that knew of his existence into the sky martial continent. Only those heavenly demons that had existed for a very long time and had not been captured by humans, or the first generation of heavenly demons, could give Lin Yuan more information about the ancestor. Otherwise, after crossing the divine gate, there would be an endless void. No matter where he went, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to find the ancestor, who was playing hide-and-seek with many big shots in the prehistoric era. Chapter 569. Moreover, if that ancestor was really like what he had expected and had cut off a branch of the endless river Styx for his own use, or if he was like Lin Yuan and had eaten some kind of strange substance that caused his body to change and gave birth to a divine ability similar to the nether realm's black water, then the other party's strength must be extremely terrifying. If he didn't have the confidence to find him, then it would be hard to say who would become whose tonic. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. Lin Yuan wanted to know more about the ancestor, not because he suspected that the other party was the same kind and wanted to get closer to him. Only lambs would gather in groups. Ferocious beasts had always been solitary. Even if Lin Yuan had convinced himself countless times and confirmed his identity as a human, at his level of cultivation, there were endless possibilities in the future. It was already impossible for him to mix with ordinary humans. Even if he regained a human body one day, there was a high chance that he would find a mountain forest to live in seclusion and continue to climb to a higher realm. This was because his path of evolution was still different from ordinary humans. Therefore, after Lin Yuan confirmed the existence of the ancestor and some information, his only thought was to hunt and devour the other party. This was the law of beasts that belonged to nature. It had nothing to do with race, only power. As the saying went, a mountain cannot hold two tigers. With all these reasons added together, Lin Yuan wanted to find the palace master right now. Because in Lin Yuan's eyes, this fellow was not only an enemy, but also a walking treasure. Yao Feng's expression changed several times before he helplessly spread his hands and smiled. Sir Dragon King, since you know about the first generation, you should know that us ordinary sky demon must unconditionally obey the first generation's orders and cannot do anything to harm the first generation, right? It's not that I don't want to cooperate with you, but I might not even be able to finish my words before I disappear. The sky demon race had an almost endless lifespan. In other words, as long as the ancestor didn't die, they wouldn't die. However, the celestial devils were the spawn of evil thoughts. They were ferocious and aggressive by nature, but when faced with real threats, they were timid and cowardly. It could be said that they were the embodiment of their bad nature. Most of the celestial devils were ferocious when they were born, but as they grew older, their ferocity would be concealed, and they would show others a tactful attitude. The longer a sky demon lived, the harder it was for them to die. This was something that didn't change in the universe. At least, they wouldn't give up the chance to live for a moment of bravery. Therefore, when facing Lin Yuan, who was a threat to them, Yao Feng was so calm. He didn't resist, but he didn't forget to show his desire to live. This method was very tactful because they were just workers and didn't have any enmity with Lin Yuan. Angering Lin Yuan wouldn't do them any good. On the contrary, if the conditions could be negotiated, they might have a chance to live. After a moment of silence, Yao Feng raised his eyebrows and smiled. Since the Dragon King has a way to control the sky demon race and is willing to lower himself to communicate with us, there must be something you want us to do, right? Hearing this, Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He didn't know how trustworthy this sky demon's words were, but since the other was willing to speak, then he had a desire to live. Therefore, it was reasonable for him to say what he couldn't do from the start and tell Lin Yuan where his bottom line was. Also, even if these sky demon were controlled by the nether realm's black water, they couldn't do anything to harm the first generation or progenitor. Even if it was indirect, it wouldn't work. Before Lin Yuan caught Yao Fong, he tried to ask the sky demon like he asked the bird demon. But as long as it was a related question, before the sky demon could speak, it would collapse and then be reborn in the nether realm's black water. The result was the same after a dozen tries. Lin Yuan then went all over the monster forest to catch these sky demon. He wanted to see if there were any different results. Then tell me what you can say. Lin Yuan slowly coiled up and stared calmly at Yao Fong. Yao Fong's expression froze. This black Jiao was a bit sinister. He had met his match. At the start, he directly stated his bottom line. He wasn't completely prepared to betray the sky demon. Because based on this trend, Lin Yuan definitely wouldn't let go of this sky demon who was willing to cooperate with him. Then, he would ask some questions. At first, Yao Fong was prepared to respond to Lin Yuan with half-truths and half-lies. Moreover, there were some questions that Lin Yuan might not be clear about. Therefore, Yao Fong gave the initiative to Lin Yuan. Perhaps the information leaked would be relatively small. As a result, Lin Yuan kicked the ball back to him and let him say it himself. I also don't know what the Dragon King is interested in. Let's talk about the elixir of immortality first. I think the Dragon King should have already gotten the real elixir of immortality and the defective elixir of immortality that we made in the northern frontier, right? The former is a metal ball. Inside it is the blood of a primordial species. After taking this elixir of immortality, the soul will quickly deteriorate. From the pure soul of a living creature, it will turn into a monster similar to our sky demon. But it's only close. For example, it's almost like the relationship between a wolf and a dog. They can never reach the heights of our heavenly demon clan in their entire lives. At best, they can only be vicious dogs. But eternal life is indeed real. Our heavenly demon clan used the elixir of immortality, which has left behind legends in the myriad world. For example, in a small world, we once developed the elixir of immortality in the form of an elixir and the fountain of youth in the form of a liquid. As for the defective elixir of immortality, its effect is not even as good as the original elixir of immortality. It won't turn living creatures into monsters. It's similar to an addictive elixir. Once taken, the spirit will be greatly stimulated, and you will feel as if you are dozens of years younger. But the essence of the elixir will not change. After taking the defective elixir of immortality, the evil thoughts in the heart of the person who took the elixir will be greatly increased. Perhaps it's something like obsession or ambition. Even if it's a flash in their heart, it will become a carrier of evil thoughts. Under the influence of this evil thought, they will do a lot of irrational things. In other words, they will put into practice an idea that they know is impossible. For example, once a cultivator breaks through a realm, he will feel that his power has skyrocketed. It's as if he is omnipotent. Those with a firm Taoist heart will quickly tell themselves that this is just a feeling of expansion brought about by the increase in power. It's an illusion. Then, they will stabilize their mind and regain their humble and cautious attitude to see the world. The effect of the defective elixir of immortality is the latter. It increases this feeling of expansion crazily and makes the person who takes the elixir feel that he is omnipotent. Chapter 570. At this point, Yao Fong wiped the sweat off his forehead. Most of what he said was true. He would only pause for a moment when it involved some confidential information and then fabricate it on the spot. For some reason, he felt that Lin Yuan knew everything. Or perhaps, even if Lin Yuan didn't know, he would have a way to verify it. Therefore, before he spoke, Yao Fong wanted to give Lin Yuan 30% truth and 70% lies. However, in front of Lin Yuan, he unknowingly revealed everything he knew. Only when it came to some crucial issues and the threat of death that lurked in his bloodline rose would he fall into a temporary state and change his words at the last minute. Oh! If that's the case, why do those people still worship the elixir of immortality so much? They clearly know that it's poison. Why do they spare no effort to promote it in the northern frontier and even publicly establish a protective umbrella? Lin Yuan's heterochromatic vertical pupils flashed with a cold light as he asked again. This was indeed something he couldn't understand. This was because the black liquid in this defective elixir of immortality had already lost its activity. Other than making the person who consumed it feel refreshed, it also constantly inflated the evil in their heart. The officials and aristocratic families of the northern frontier weren't easy to deal with. In other words, after several rounds of purges by Lin Yuan, those who were able to survive until now and occupy a place in the northern frontier weren't short-sighted people. In terms of ferocity, they weren't inferior to Sky Demon. After these people knew that they had been deceived, why would they still work for Sky Demon? If Lin Yuan was in the same position, even if he had to break his teeth, he would still bite off at least 2 pieces of flesh from the other party. After all, the elixir of immortality in the Jade Lake Divine Palace was a living example. Those cultivators who came to seek refuge all changed their physical bodies and appeared to be youths in their teens or 20s. A group of people who were smart enough to know that they had been fooled. Don't use excuses like Sky Demon was powerful and not to be trifled with. Lin Yuan's several purges in the northern frontier had clearly shown the aristocratic families in the northern frontier who was the real father. At the very beginning, there were still people who hoped that the Shunwu dynasty would conquer the Wei River, flatten the northern frontier, and end Lin Yuan's rule. However, after Lin Yuan's bloody purge, the aristocratic families on the northern frontier had completely lost their reverence for the Shunwu dynasty. They even sent many people to join the northern frontier army as staff officers, generals, and other positions. They launched a crazy attack on the armies of the Shunwu dynasty and the Shuangjin dynasty. No matter how powerful the foreign Sky Demon was, he still had to avoid Lin Yuan. The Sky Demon wasn't easy to deal with, but was Lin Yuan easy to deal with? Hee. This is what I meant by addiction. It's not that one will become addicted after taking a defective drug. It's just that the evil in one's heart will continue to swell. There is a limit to a human's soul and mind. If they don't continue to take this drug, they will go crazy. In addition, Sir Dragon King doesn't understand the morals of those who take the drug, right? They are all so old that even their grandchildren can start their own families. However, they are still greedy for power and position. They use the excuse that their elders are in charge, so that their family won't decline or even have no descendants because of some wrong decisions. In reality, they are just unwilling to give power to the younger generation. How do you think an old man like him would be able to resist the temptation of eternal life? Moreover, these people don't have any morals to speak of. When they first found out that they were deceived, they were furious. They even wanted to go to the northern frontier prince's residence to expose us. However, those who actually took action were stopped and killed by the protective umbrella we set up. Those who didn't take action only shouted, but in their hearts, they still hoped to obtain the real elixir of immortality. That's why they were willing to cooperate with us. Moreover, even if they couldn't obtain the elixir of immortality, they wouldn't care. Humans are creatures with extremely bad natures. After they found out that they were deceived, they simply hardened their hearts and helped us deceive even more people. Firstly, they wanted to make sure that they weren't the only ones who suffered losses. Secondly, they wanted to leave a good impression with us and make us treat them as one of our own. Could it be that Sir Dragon King still has any extravagant hopes for these kinds of people? Yao Feng spread out his hands with a helpless expression on his face. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. Then, he nodded slightly. because this kind of statement was indeed reasonable. Humans were inherently bad natures. Even their best friends were the same. If you lived a much better life than them, they might sincerely wish you well and hope that you lived a better life. Of course, they would still feel some envy in their hearts. However, if you lived a slightly better life than them, they would even be more vicious than outsiders. They would hope that you could think of a way to make their lives better. If you couldn't do that, they would even use all kinds of methods to trip you up and make you return to your original state. True friends weren't easy to make. A person could only meet a few in their lifetime. When the Sky Demon set his sights on the entire northern frontier, this result was already destined. Evil thoughts overflowed. I suffered a loss and was deceived. What right do you have to stay out of this? So, this kind of defective elixir of immortality can't be saved? Lin Yuan's rock skin twitched slightly. A murderous intent flashed through his eyes. No wonder when he released a large number of controlled Sky Demon all over the northern frontier, they couldn't sense the existence of their own kind at all. It turned out that the so-called protective umbrella wasn't formed by the Sky Demon who had taken the elixir of immortality. It was a group of humans who had taken the elixir of immortality. Lei Qiusheng probably hadn't eaten anything similar because he was the Sky Demon's strategic partner. Moreover, he was ambitious and ruthless. He wouldn't desire this so-called immortality. Let alone a defective elixir of immortality, he wouldn't even be interested in it. Therefore, at the crucial moment, Lei Qiusheng was able to jump out and counterattack the Sky Demon. Not only did he not act according to plan, he even pushed the Xinwu dynasty's army to attack the Frost Mirror Cavalry. Again, there weren't many creatures like this. Ink Abyss was one, and Lei Qiusheng was another. Lin Yuan couldn't give any other examples. Lin Yuan guessed that Su Nan was most likely the one who had taken the defective elixir of immortality. However, he didn't reveal this secret, causing Li Zhong and the others to mistakenly think that Su Nan was the same as Lei Qiusheng. They were both strategic partners of the Sky Demon and didn't care about the elixir of immortality. They were purely dissatisfied with Lin Yuan's continuous checks and balances. Then, under these circumstances, they colluded with the Sky Demon. Now, it seemed that Su Nan's style was completely due to the fact that the defective elixir of immortality had inflated his evil thoughts. Therefore, Su Nan slowly put his bold ideas into practice. He also used the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce as a foundation to make things easier for the Sky Demon. This was the reason why the protective umbrella existed. Chapter 571. There's Hope. Yao Fong nodded affirmatively again and said in a low voice, "Actually, the side effects of this immortality medicine are all mental. If the user doesn't take the medicine for a long time, they will feel weak and mentally weak. They might even feel that they're not far from death. However, that's just their own psychological effect. If they don't take the medicine, they will only feel uncomfortable for a period of time." Lin Yuan's eyes showed that he was deep in thought. He asked, "So, the so-called addiction is because they want to eat it? If they can overcome their own psychological effects, they can get rid of this negative state?" "Theoretically, it's like this." Yao Fong nodded slightly to express her affirmation of Lin Yuan's words. Then, she changed the topic. But this is just a theory. If it's someone with a strong will, it might be possible. However, how many people with a strong will are willing to take the immortality medicine? They're afraid of death, so they take the immortality medicine. If they feel that they'll die if they don't take the medicine, can they really not take it? Lin Yuan, although he didn't know why, he felt that this Sky Demon's words made a lot of sense. If they're afraid of death, then they'll take the immortality medicine. If they think that they'll die if they don't take the medicine, can they really not take it? Even if Lin Yuan told them how to quit the defective immortality medicine, it would be meaningless, because they wouldn't believe him. Even if they believed him, they wouldn't have enough willpower to withstand the side effects of not taking the medicine. Why would someone with a strong will take this thing? The Dragon King's idea is only theoretically feasible. But then again, the defective elixir of immortality stimulates the evil in people's hearts and inflates the person who takes the elixir. It's like a balloon that keeps inflating until it reaches the limit of its carrying capacity and explodes. But at this point, the person has no value. If he dies, then so be it. We won't lose anything. Because of the existence of such people, more and more people will take the defective immortality medicine. We won't fall into a situation where we have no one to use. In addition, it's still the same example. These people are like balloons. Every time they take the medicine, they'll be inflated. Correspondingly, their evil will grow bigger and bigger. When they can't suppress it anymore, they'll do things that support their evil will. As the number of times they take the medicine increases, their evil will grow bigger and their willpower will become weaker and weaker. Therefore, the interval between taking the medicine will become shorter and shorter. From taking the medicine once a month to taking the medicine once every 3 to 5 days is a very fast process. As their willpower grows weaker and weaker, their evil will grow stronger and stronger. The more this happens, the harder it is for them to quit. The backlash from their evil will isn't something that their weak willpower can withstand. At this stage, it's like a fool's dream to quit. Almost all of them will collapse under the backlash of their evil will. If they don't go crazy, they'll commit suicide. Yao Feng's lips curled up slightly. She said with a fake smile, "It's because of this desire that the originally well-hidden umbrella was exposed to the Dragon King." Several batches of immortality medicine were intercepted by the Northern Battlefront Army. The people who couldn't get the immortality medicine are getting crazier and crazier. If the Dragon King doesn't guide them carefully, it might be a raging inferno. Lin Yuan. Another riot among the aristocratic families in the northern frontier? Although the northern frontier's current strength wasn't unbearable, that was when the northern frontier was in its prime. Now, many officials in the northern frontier, and many officers in the northern frontier army could be drug users. If a fight really broke out, it would be impossible to tell who was the enemy and who was the ally. The overwhelming power couldn't be exerted at all. Who knows what crazy things those drug users could do? A raging inferno. It wasn't impossible. If it was any other time, it would be fine. But at this juncture, the Shuangjin dynasty and the Qingjiang dynasty were eyeing covetously. There must be someone in the Xunwu dynasty who was controlled by the immortality medicine. Plus, there was the sky demon who would invade at any time. The northern frontier was now surrounded by wolves. If there was another civil war, even the Daluo Golden Immortals couldn't save the situation. You mean? Lin Yuan opened his mouth. There was a hint of struggle in his eyes. Yao Feng nodded slightly and said with a smile, "It's just as the Dragon King thinks. I can provide the Dragon King with the immortality medicine and let him control these drug users. But I hope that the Dragon King can open the market for the immortality medicine. I can guarantee that these defective products won't fall into the hands of those who haven't taken them before. But the prerequisite is that the Dragon King can control the other sky demons scattered in the monster forest and ensure that they won't mix into this market. This will allow the number of drug users to continue increasing." Speaking up to this point, the smile on Yao Feng's face became more confident. She said in a low voice, "I think the Dragon King has already considered this point. That's why he spared our lives. Because, from the start, you didn't have any other choice, right?" Lin Yuan sighed and didn't continue Yao Feng's words. Was Yao Feng right? She was right. These drug users didn't have any self-control. Cutting off their supply at this time was forcing them to rebel. But knowing the dangers of the immortality medicine, Lin Yuan wanted to convince himself to open the market for the immortality medicine. This was still a problem. Even if he walked the path of godhood, His soul was still that of a human. A human had a bottom line. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the emotionless heterochromatic eyes stared at Yao Fong. At this moment, Yao Fong felt that the world in front of her had turned black and white again. Killing intent. Endless killing intent. The smile on Yao Fong's face slowly disappeared. Large amounts of cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. The rumored Black Jiao wasn't someone who was easy to talk to. He wasn't someone who was willing to suffer losses. He was now afraid that Lin Yuan would disregard everything and fight to the death. At that time, it was hard to say what would happen to the northern frontier, but he would definitely die. After a while, Lin Yuan sighed again. He narrowed his eyes and said, "But the problem is, how can I believe you?" Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Yao Fong was shocked. He didn't dare to continue being pretentious. He said in a low voice, "Dragon King, I can prove my allegiance. Although my position in the northern frontier isn't as high as the first generation, as one of the oldest sky demon, I know most of the plans. I can give you a list of people under the umbrella. Although it's not comprehensive, I know all 4 people in charge." Hearing the 4 people in charge match Su Nan's statement, Lin Yuan said with interest, "Then tell me about it first." Chapter 572. Su Nan. Sherdong. Xiao Yilin. Zhang Qilin. Yao Fong didn't dare to be pretentious. Under the pressure from Lin Yuan, he quickly spat out 4 names. In today's northern frontier, these 4 simple names signified power. Any one of these 4 people could cause an earthquake in the entire northern frontier with a stomp of their feet. Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce Chairman Su Nan. Demon Emperor Association's Intelligence Agency Head Sherdong. Northern Frontier's Biggest Families Representative Qiao Yilin. Northern Frontier's Only Army's Commander Zhang Qilin. Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. Although Su Nan's exposure had made him clear that the identities of the remaining 3 people in charge were not simple, Lin Yuan's initial idea was completely different from what Yao Fong had said. At first, he thought that it would be a 1 versus 2 situation, but in the end, Yao Fong had directly turned it into a bomb. Lin Yuan took a while to calm himself down. He looked at Yao Fong with a cold face and said, "You must know that although your operation is quite efficient, the northern frontier's main forces haven't been damaged. In other words, I still have the final say in the northern frontier. Even if these 4 people join forces, they won't be able to withstand a single round from me. Do you understand?" Yao Fong held the mentality of going all out. He patted his chest and said in a deep voice, "Dragon King, don't worry. I will take full responsibility for my words. The first generation might have left a trick up his sleeve. There might not be only 4 people in charge, but I can be sure that these 4 people are all drug users. Moreover, they have taken the drug many times. They are the type that can't be kicked." When he said this, Yao Fong's heart was a little uneasy. After all, although these 4 people couldn't be compared to Li Zhong's right-hand men, they were definitely the pillars of the northern frontier. For them to suddenly defect to Lin Yuan's side was no different from slapping Lin Yuan's face. Furthermore, the number of important characters that had been roped in were not just these 4. The Sky Demon had always been cruel and cunning. Even when facing his own kind, he would scheme and scheme against others. It was very normal for him to have a hand in such a big matter. In fact, even Li Zhong could be a drug user. It was just that Yao Fong didn't dare to voice her conjecture out loud. After all, Li Zhong was the king of the northern frontier, and he wasn't the kind of northern frontier king who was completely overthrown by Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan wasn't around, Li Zhong had the right to make all the decisions in the northern frontier, big or small. Although the undercurrents in the northern frontier were concealed well, it wouldn't be right to say that Li Zhong didn't know anything about it. After all, without their own request, No one in power would allow a faction to appear under them to go against them. When such a malignant tumor appeared, there were only two paths. One was to be immediately eradicated, and the other was to pay a heavy price and become the lackey of the person in power. There was no chance for them to do anything big. Are you sure that Zhang Qilin and Sherdong are the same? Lin Yuan's eyes were still slightly narrowed as he threw out another question. Yao Feng was slightly startled. She quickly recalled that the exposure of the protective umbrella, this time, was caused by Zhang Qilin jumping out and seizing a large amount of defective elixirs of immortality. And this series of actions seemed to have Sherdong's shadow behind it. This, for a moment, Yao Feng didn't know how to answer Lin Yuan. The exposure of the defective elixirs of immortality and the protective umbrella were the work of these two people. But now that she thought about it, these two people seemed to be standing on their side. And they were the type that would never be able to kick their drug addiction. Did these two people want to go crazy or die? Before she could divert her thoughts, Yao Feng was quickly brought back to reality by Lin Yuan's cold gaze. Her scalp tingled as she said, "I can guarantee this with my life. Because the defective elixirs of immortality were all refined by the first generation and then sent to the Sky Demon who was in charge of the various settlements. Who came to take the elixirs, how much they took, and who ended up in the hands of these elixirs in the end, we all know in our hearts. And Sherdong and Zhang Qilin are the pillars of the northern frontier. Even if they wanted to defect, we wouldn't dare to believe it." Speaking up to here, Yao Feng seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes flashed as she quickly said, "Yes, I remember now. They all ate the defective elixirs in front of the first generation. We all saw it with our own eyes." Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched. What was this? Internal strife? Conspiracy? Or sacrifice themselves for justice? He really didn't think that Sherdong and Zhang Qilin would have much loyalty to him. For Sherdong, who was promoted by him and given more power, it was fine. But Zhang Qilin, who was loyal to Lei Qiusheng, definitely didn't have much loyalty to him. If it wasn't for the fact that he was worried that Zhang Qilin would betray him, why would he leave the Northern Frontier Army, the earliest and most elite army in the Northern Frontier? Safety? What a joke. The Northern Frontier was Lin Yuan's back. Why would he dare to break down the city walls of the Northern Frontier? This would make it easier to plan the city and expand the city. But more importantly, the Northern Frontier was right next to the monster forest. The ferocious monsters in the Hengduan mountain range could run through the forests, basins, and plains without any obstacles. Just how terrifying was that? The Northern Frontier actually didn't need any army to guard it. Lin Yuan could even confidently say that unless the Heaven's Gate was lost and the monsters on the other side of the Heaven's Gate invaded, even the Shunwu dynasty at its peak wouldn't be able to take down the tough bone that was the Northern Frontier under the protection of the Hengduan mountain range. In the past, Lin Yuan would still be worried about the opinions of the other 6 empires. But now, none of this was a problem. All the top forces had become familiar with Lin Yuan. When they reached an agreement, they also expressed their willingness to accept Lin Yuan into their circle. With the support of these big shots, even if the other 6 empires were dissatisfied, they would have to think about whether they were powerful enough. Even if things got out of hand, the Shuangjin dynasty and the Shunwu dynasty had already fought against each other. The only one that could threaten Lin Yuan was the Qinjiang dynasty. But even if the 3 empires joined forces, Lin Yuan and the Monster King Palace might not be able to win, but they would still be able to put up a fight. The worst that could happen was that both sides would be heavily injured and die together. In Lin Yuan's eyes, the Northern Frontier Army was like a training ground for the other armies. It was the #1 blade against the outside world. Keeping the blade in the sheath at a critical moment was out of caution. After all, the handle of the blade was in Zhang Qilin's hands. He wouldn't be able to see anything wrong with it for a day or 2. But if the key was to fight against a general who could change sides at any time, it would be hard to say who the blade would be pointed at. Chapter 573. Seeing that Lin Yuan was deep in thought, Yao Feng opened his mouth, but he didn't dare to disturb Lin Yuan. He could only put on a bitter face and start to think about the strangeness of the situation. The immortal elixirs were seized and the umbrella was exposed. It wasn't because Lin Yuan's subordinates reacted quickly. Instead, it was because their own people suddenly turned around and stabbed them in the vitals. Furthermore, it was a critical hit. The amount of immortal elixirs that first generation could produce was actually quite limited. It was enough to supply the northern frontier market, but as the trade gradually expanded, the situation where the supply couldn't meet the demand didn't appear. However, the consumption had started to catch up with the production. After all, this kind of defective immortal elixir was addictive. The frequency of users taking the elixirs would increase, and the quantity would also increase. In this way, not only were the previous stocks mostly sold out, but the subsequent defective products would also be sold out the moment they came out of the market. It wasn't that the demand of the users had reached such a stage. Instead, as time passed, the users had gradually realized this drawback. Some of the smarter ones had already started to stockpile the elixirs for themselves. Firstly, it was to prepare for an emergency. Secondly, it was to stock up for profit. Once there was a shortage of immortal elixirs, they would immediately raise the price by 100 or even 1,000 times. They would use the excess immortal elixirs in their hands to create a business that was even more profitable than Lin Yuan's monopoly of the Fey market. After all, most of the users had this kind of background. Even those who hadn't been in charge for long had family experience. And this time, Shi Dong and Zhang Qilin had joined hands. Not only had they seized a large amount of immortal elixirs, but they had also directly sealed off some private trading channels. After all, they were all on the same side. They were very clear about these trading locations and method. If they really wanted to crack down on this matter, it wouldn't be that difficult. The umbrella was exposed because those users who didn't stockpile defective immortal elixirs were causing trouble. After all, after Zhang Qilin joined hands with Shi Dong, they hadn't received any elixirs for at least half a month. Normally, they would go around the streets, begging everyone to get some immortal elixirs to solve their urgent need. But at this juncture, even if they wanted to profit, they had to see if the situation was clear, right? Regardless of whether the people who had taken the elixir of immortality or not, all of them refused to help these people. As a result, the situation became more and more serious. Finally, even existences like Li Zhong and Lin Yuan, who stood at the top of the northern frontier pyramid, could no longer hold themselves back and began to clean up the northern frontier. But why? Yao Feng and Lin Yuan were thinking about the same thing. Can I understand this as another trap within a trap? Last time, that first generation of yours came to steal a beam and replace it with someone else, throwing all of the forces he had painstakingly gathered in the south into the Battle of Wei River. 80% of the Sky Demon and inferior races were captured by us, to the extent where a certain expert from your Sky Demon race was seriously injured and went into hiding. Meanwhile, this battle seemed stupid and dangerous, but the result was that your first generation used the method of disappearing to silently infiltrate our northern frontier, allowing himself to hide in the relatively stable northern frontier from the Xinwu dynasty's central plains and southern regions that were about to become the center of a storm. Moreover, before this, he had already set up a trap in the northern frontier, corrupting a large number of officials, aristocratic families, and even the pillars of the northern frontier. Under these preconditions, after he confirmed that he had achieved his goal, would he abandon the rook to save the king? Would he have me focus all of my attention on you scattered Sky Demon and those people who consumed the defective immortality medicine? Lin Yuan muttered to himself, but his eyes gradually brightened, his tone gradually rising. This type of first-rate schemer and second-rate wise person all have a common point, and that is, when a plan is useful, they always like to repeat the same work, forever unable to escape those rules and regulations. In that case, your first generation is planning to escape, right? When his voice fell, Yao Feng's expression had already completely sunk. Was Lin Yuan right? There was an 80% chance that he was right. From the perspective of an old sky demon who had lived for tens of thousands of years, this first generation was rather immature. If he was in charge, he definitely wouldn't have taken the initiative to expose his existence in order to escape the impending storm. Just by this operation of escaping to the northern frontier, this fellow had used up his greatest trump card, and at the same time, he had also ruined all of the efforts that the Jade Lake Celestial Palace had put in during this period of time in the south. The reason why the Shunwu dynasty was still able to maintain the state of war and deadlock was all thanks to the inferior sky demon that had been corrupted by him. In other words, it was the aristocratic families, nobles, and sects of the Shunwu dynasty that stubbornly held on. If it wasn't for this move, perhaps all of the turmoil in the Shunwu dynasty would have collapsed without a fight, and the so-called storm wouldn't have come at all. Now that Lin Yuan had displayed a method that could kill the sky demon, this first generation was clearly afraid and actually wanted to use the same trick again, sacrificing all of his arrangements in the northern frontier to fight for a chance to escape. But was this possible? Yao Feng couldn't help but admit that in terms of strategy in the northern frontier, this move of the first generation could be considered a lucky hit. After all, once the turmoil of the drug users erupted, even if Lin Yuan had the strongest trump card in his hands, he would still be flustered for a while. After all, the drug users were fundamentally still humans. Lin Yuan couldn't possibly kill all of the humans in the northern frontier just to eliminate the threat, right? Even if Lin Yuan caught a sky demon like him who was willing to cooperate, it would be useless. This was because the number of drug users abandoned by the first generation might be even more terrifying than what he had previously known. Therefore, the list of names that the sky demon spoke of was both true and false. There wasn't an absolutely correct plan at all. If he wanted to get rid of these drug users, it would really be a painstaking effort. However, painstaking effort was just painstaking effort. In the end, the sky demon and the drug users scattered in the northern frontier would never be able to fight against the true power of the northern frontier. Being completely eliminated was their only ending. Yao Feng's heart went slightly cold. He sighed helplessly and said in a low voice, "Yes, the possibility is very high." He suddenly realized something. He didn't have the qualifications to pity those drug users. Because in the first generation's plan, he was also an abandoned chess piece. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and asked again, "That's right, you said that you can help me control the drug users. Could it be that you can also make that defective elixir of immortality? From your confident tone before, it seems that as long as I can control the other scattered sky demon and ensure that the things in their hands don't enter the northern frontier market, you can eat this plate yourself?" "That's not it." Yao Feng shook his head very honestly. Chapter 574. I said before that the production of the elixir of immortality isn't that big of a deal. It mainly relies on the blood of a prehistoric beast. The other spiritual items are completely meaningless. I can't explain to you what a prehistoric beast is, nor can I tell you what kind of beast it is. However, I am certain that only the first die has this type of blood. If the first die really wants to escape, that means that the production of the defective elixir of immortality will quickly stop. I have no way to stop that. However, I am a cautious person, so I have never conducted large-scale transactions. No matter how tightly the protective umbrella is created by the people who have taken the elixir, I will not trust them at all. Because I know the effects of the defective elixir, They are like ticking time bombs in my eyes. Cooperating with them is the same as asking a tiger for its skin. I don't know if the Sky Demon has any other defective elixirs of immortality, but I have over 10,000 of them. It will definitely not be a problem to control this situation that has gone out of control. You should know that once the elixir of immortality in my hands reappears on the market, to those who have been hoarding the elixirs of immortality, it means that the alarm has been lifted. Thus, they will take out large amounts of their own elixirs of immortality and take advantage of this opportunity to make huge profit. If this is the case, I can guarantee that the chaos of the people who have taken the elixir of immortality on the northern frontier will be delayed for at least half a year. I feel that this time should be enough for the Dragon King to complete a series of preparations, right? As the abandoned party, it was impossible for Yao Fong to not have any resentment towards the first die. After all, the Sky Demon was never a race that believed in truth, kindness, and beauty. If it wasn't for the shackles of his bloodline that prevented him from actively or indirectly harming the first die and the first die, he would have led Lin Yuan to skin the first die. Yes, skin him. For the Sky Demon who existed as a spiritual body. Sealing one's own kind in a physical body, and then skinning and dismembering them, was a rather cruel punishment that would not take the life of one's own kind. At first, Yao Fong hesitated to tell the truth in front of Lin Yuan, not because of anything else, but because Lin Yuan used the two skills of Tyrant of the World and Long Wei. Therefore, when facing Lin Yuan, Yao Fong subconsciously wanted to tell the truth. But at this moment, even if Lin Yuan didn't use the functional assistance, Yao Fong wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. Half a year. Still not enough. Lin Yuan's eyes also became incomparably cold. He was truly disgusted by the methods of that exceptional talent. Although he only had a few decades of memories from his previous life, he lived in an era of information explosion. He also had a blood feud. Lin Yuan was like a dry sponge, crazily absorbing nutrients from various fields. As long as it could make himself stronger, he would not let it go. How did the Braid dynasty fall in his previous life? Fusho paste. Opium. These two things directly broke the spines of those so-called heroes, warriors, and heroes. It caused the former #1 country in the East to fall to a state where anyone could step on it. In this life, he was reborn in the Sky Martial Continent. Although this kind of defective elixir of immortality did not violate Lin Yuan's taboo, it was indeed something similar. He could even imagine what kind of terrifying things those people who couldn't obtain the elixir of immortality would do after falling into madness. Furthermore, with Yao Fong's confirmation, Lin Yuan was very clear that if these people wanted to give up on the defective elixir of immortality, it would be even harder than those people in his previous life who had taken something they shouldn't have. In this kind of situation, those who took the elixir of immortality would die sooner or later. Thus, there was no need to hesitate. If a piece of flesh was not dug out after necrosis, the entire nervous system would be necrotic. At that time, the area affected would be even larger, and it could even threaten one's life. Dragon King's meaning is? Yao Fong thought for a moment. His expression changed several times. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he remained silent. Didn't you say that you don't have a detailed list of people who took the elixir of immortality? I will think of a way to provide you with the raw materials for the elixir of immortality. I want you to quickly occupy the market for the elixir of immortality and ensure that there won't be any trouble in the northern frontier for a short period of time. At the same time, I want you to take full responsibility and ensure that everyone who bought the elixir of immortality from you will be recorded. Even if the elixir of immortality is leaked out, you have to confirm who got it and quickly fill up this list. Understand? Lin Yuan coldly sized up Yao Fong. His tone didn't have the slightest bit of emotion. It was as if this decision didn't have any psychological barrier for him. Yes, I understand. Yao Fong slightly bowed towards Lin Yuan and replied in a low voice. He didn't want to betray the Sky Demon clan, but as an abandoned child in the eyes of the first generation, it was too difficult for him to swallow this anger. Since he wanted to preserve his own life and take revenge on the first generation, helping Lin Yuan control the people who took the elixir of immortality in the northern frontier was the best way. There was no such thing as nonsense between evil people. If you do the first, I will do the same. It was that simple. At the same time, Yao Fong gained a new understanding of Lin Yuan's ruthlessness and decisiveness. Hundreds or even tens of millions of lives seemed to have no weight in Lin Yuan's eyes at all. Even in other worlds, he did not do the same thing to the lords who were also used by the heavenly demon to make them lose face. In any case, when others faced this kind of situation, they would still pretend to set up various organizations to persuade the people who took the elixir of immortality to come out and admit their mistake. Then, they would get rid of their dependence on the defective elixir of immortality. Even though the results of doing this weren't that great, and the benefits were far less than what they invested, it might even push things to an even more extreme direction. After all, publicizing the people who took the elixir of immortality and then forcing them to get rid of their elixir of immortality sounded good, but this was a matter of life and death. Once the elixir of immortality failed, the people who were pushed out would die from the backlash of various negative wills. This was equivalent to creating a negative teaching material. But what about Lin Yuan? He cut the Gordian knot with a sharp knife without the slightest hesitation. You have a problem? Fine, I'll be honest. I can't solve your problem, but I can directly deal with you. Just as Yao Fong let out a sigh of relief and thought that everything had come to an end, a cold glint suddenly flashed through Lin Yuan's eyes. A ball of black liquid slowly wriggled out from the dark forest. Then, it twisted and wriggled in front of Yao Fong, gradually turning into the appearance of the Sky Demon who had tried to escape in his spiritual form. Is what he said true? Lin Yuan tilted his head and asked the Sky Demon who had just joined the Nether Realm's Black Water family. Part of it is true, part of it is false. The Sky Demon was silent for a moment before slowly saying, for example, the raw material of the elixir of immortality is. Chapter 575. Pung. Before the Sky Demon could finish speaking, it collapsed and exploded. Yao Fong let out a long sigh as fear appeared in his eyes. Luckily, even if this guy was controlled by Lin Yuan, there were still some things he couldn't say. However, in the next moment, the Sky Demon regained its original form and reappeared in front of Yao Fong. Its tone didn't change in the slightest. Like a precision instrument, it opened its mouth to continue speaking. Pung. This time, it had just opened its mouth, but before it could even make a sound, it exploded. Pung, pung, pung. Just like that, it repeated for more than 30 times. The Sky Demon continued to explode into black liquid in front of Yao Fong. Then, it twisted and wriggled, regaining its original form and continuing to explode. This cycle repeated endlessly. Yao Fong. The other 4 Sky Demons in the background. Too terrifying. Too disgusting. Yao Fong had thought of countless ways to die, but he had never thought that this existence that violated the bloodline shackles would not be destroyed. Instead, it would be reborn and explode under Lin Yuan's control. However, there wasn't the slightest change in its expression. It was as if as long as Lin Yuan didn't tell it to stop, it would continue this cycle. Lin Yuan sneered. Then, with a light wave of his tail, he scattered the Sky Demon that had regained its original form. This time, the Sky Demon was finally freed from this cycle of rebirth, destruction, rebirth, and destruction. It turned into a black liquid and rolled back into the night, disappearing without a trace. Gulp. The 5 Sky Demons all swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They suddenly realized that death wasn't frightening. What was frightening was the fact that they couldn't even die. This is this king's little trick. To tell you the truth, this king has also planted a corresponding trick on the 5 of you. If you are willing to work for this king, I can guarantee your safety. Not to mention that first generation, even if your ancestor descends to this world, I can guarantee your safety. But the words came again. If you are half-hearted and unwilling to work for this king, or if you play any tricks on the mission given to you by this king, you have seen the example of the sky demon just now. Believe in this king's patience. I can watch you repeatedly commit suicide for thousands of years. As for whether you can withstand it, this king does not know. When Lin Yuan's voice fell, the 5 sky demons' faces all changed, and the atmosphere became inexplicably heavy. They seemed to really feel that Lin Yuan had placed an extremely powerful restriction on them without them knowing it. Taking a step forward would be a fate worse than death, and taking a step back would mean betraying the clan? What are they? It was Sky Demon. They were a terrifying race that struck fear into the hearts of the myriad worlds. Would they submit because of death? Of course not. They would submit to a fate worse than death. Thinking about it carefully, what was the consequence of betraying the tribe? It was nothing more than the annihilation of the spirit, the collapse of the physical body, and the disappearance of the world. But the price of offending Lin Yuan was the same as their companion just now, falling into the cycle of life and death. If Lin Yuan was not willing to release them, they would have to remain in this cycle forever for Lin Yuan's amusement and pleasure. Was this a king demon or a demon? 4 hours later, Lin Yuan slowly walked out of the demon beast forest. Behind him followed more than 200 white-robed youths and youths. There were both men and women. Although their appearances were different at this moment, they all had the same expression on their faces. It was as if they had just woken up from a nap and were suddenly told that their father had died. These people were all sky demon who had been abandoned by the first generation. There were inferior clans and ordinary sky demons. After all, with the existence of the traitor Yao Feng, in addition to Lin Yuan's Eye of the God and his familiarity with the demon beast forest, these sky demons were far from being able to play hide and seek. Soon, Lin Yuan led a large group of sky demon with strong cultivation to the vicinity of Shunning City. He then said expressionlessly, "Everyone, let's set up an illegal black market here. Other than the elixir of immortality, I will also find some other goods for you as a cover. After that, there will be a few batches of inspection. I will notify you in advance. As long as the elixir of immortality is not found on the spot, I will ensure that you will be fine." Yao Feng. He really wanted to ask if Lin Yuan was treating them as fools. When the umbrella was at its peak, they didn't even dare to expand their trading network to the surroundings of Shunning City. After all, the Northern Frontier King's mansion was here. The Demon Emperor Association and the Imperial Secret Service's headquarters were also here. This used to be the most impregnable pass in the northern frontier. Even if those tall and thick walls were torn down, it still perfectly shouldered the position of the heart of the northern frontier. Let's put it this way. Other than those ordinary people, anyone with a name in Shunning City could casually use the power in their hands to crush someone to death. Although they didn't dare to be so arrogant in front of Li Zhong, this comparison was definitely not an exaggeration. Now that the elixir of immortality had been found in the northern frontier, all the departments were working closely together. In the blink of an eye, a large group of sky demon had settled in the vicinity of Shunning City. They even set up an illegal black market to sell the elixir of immortality. And from Lin Yuan's words, it seemed like he wanted to turn this black market into a legal black market? How could this be possible? There was only one black market in the northern frontier, and it was in Shunning City. Other large and small gathering places also had black markets, but they basically had nothing to do with the Northern Frontier King's mansion. Strictly speaking, they were also illegal black market. But the people behind the scenes were all local officials or large aristocratic families. Some were similar to the Demon Emperor Association, a semi-official existence. But they couldn't withstand any scrutiny and disturbance. Once an official came to inspect, those black markets without legal licenses would all have to close down. Not only would they give themselves away, but they would also give themselves away. But Lin Yuan's tone, why didn't it sound like that was the case? As long as the elixir of immortality wasn't found on the spot, it would be fine? You should forget it. He really had the final say in the northern frontier. Thinking of this, Yao Feng helplessly sighed and said in a deep voice, "Dragon King, you also know that the northern frontier has always rejected the elixir of immortality. We have closed down all the other sales outlets and concentrated the transactions around Shunning City. This isn't a small matter. Those guys will definitely stay dormant and observe for a while. I'm afraid there won't be any results in a short period of time." Lin Yuan coldly glanced at Yao Feng. The dragon and demon looked at each other for a moment. Suddenly, Lin Yuan opened his mouth and laughed. Would there really be a fool who would believe that there wasn't anything fishy going on? That obviously wasn't impossible. But the danger of a defective elixir of immortality was no less than the few things that Lin Yuan knew. Once the drug addiction kicked in, those people would even sell their dignity, so how could they act cautiously? Chapter 576. Ever since Zhang Qilin seized a batch of elixirs of immortality, the northern frontier had been in a state of surging undercurrents. After all, the combined power of all the aristocratic families and some local organizations was not much weaker than the association of demon emperors. It could even be said that they were stronger. However, the association of demon emperors was like a fist. Lin Yuan would hit wherever he pointed. For the scattered forces of the northern frontier, it was naturally hard for them to resist. However, the side effects of the elixirs of immortality were right there. Once the Sky Demon really cut off the supply, none of the people who had taken the elixirs would be able to run away. Who would care about their grudges? Even if they were sworn enemies in the past, they were now close comrades. Under such circumstances, Shi Dong was shocked to realize that the association of demon emperors was not as strong as he thought. Facing the counterattack of the forces of the northern frontier, the association of demon emperors and the northern battlefront army without outside help were like a small boat in the ocean. They were always paying attention to the wind and waves, afraid that a sudden storm would make this small boat sink to the bottom of the ocean. Shi Dong rubbed between his eyebrows and let out a long breath. Creak. The door of the office was slowly pushed open. A young man in a black robe with a hood walked into the office. His head was lowered, so Shi Dong could not see his face clearly. "What's the matter?" Shi Dong frowned slowly. His face was a bit gloomy. Although Shi Dong could not see his face clearly, he could still see the general outline of his face. It was a somewhat unfamiliar face. He should be a new member of the Association of Demon Emperors. Otherwise, he would not be so daring. He did not even knock before entering Shi Dong's office, and he did not say a word after coming in. It was as if he was waiting for Shi Dong to speak first. It wasn't as if Shi Dong hadn't experienced someone suddenly barging into his office, or rather, it was quite common during this period of time. However, those were all sudden situations, such as a transaction of the elixir of immortality appearing somewhere, finding out who was the user of the elixir of immortality, or some movement from the embroidered uniform guards. These people would rush in to report the situation, then rush out to continue with their work. However, it was Shi Dong's first time to see someone come in without knocking and then lower their head to play the game. As for assassination, Shi Dong had never considered such a situation. No matter how bad the association of the Demon Emperor was, It was still an intelligence agency that was as famous as the embroidered uniform guards. Whether it was in terms of ambush or assassination, the members of the Association of the Demon Emperor were all second to none in the northern frontier. There were countless open and hidden sentries outside. Even if they met a familiar colleague, they had to match their slogans. Once something went wrong, the Association of the Demon Emperor would quickly unleash its power and nip all threats in the bud. Night had just fallen, and tonight's password had only been issued not long ago, so there was no problem of early exposure. The black-robed man remained silent as he slowly reached behind his waist. A moment later, he threw a pair of black shackles onto the table in front of Sherdong. Then, he said coldly, "Put the shackles on yourself and follow me." Sherdong was so angry that he laughed. He didn't put on airs anymore. He stood up from his chair and asked with a fierce face, "How interesting." I, Sherdong, as the president of the Association of the Demon Emperor, was actually arrested by a member of the Association of the Demon Emperor in their headquarters. May I ask, whose orders are you following? Clang. Almost at the same moment Sherdong finished his words. Two cold lights lit up in the office one after another. A figure wearing a black hooded robe and a white mask appeared beside Sherdong. His right hand was holding a long saber that was reflecting a chilling aura under the moonlight. The blade of the saber was slanted and stopped a short halberd. "Who are you? Did you eat a bear's heart or a leopard's guts? How dare you try to assassinate me?" Sherdong looked at the short halberd and his face turned gloomy. As one of the few long pole weapons that generals loved, the halberd was definitely one of the most popular weapons. However, in the entire northern frontier, there weren't many experts who could use the halberd. After all, this kind of weapon required a lot of strength, and required more skill than strength. It wasn't something that anyone could use. The other party looked very young. Clearly, he wasn't Yen Xingqi, who looked like a middle-aged man. Looking further down inadvertently, Sherdong's eyes swept across the short halberd's shaft. Black, made of bone, and engraved with a dragon winding around the shaft. Blackwater Army. Zhao Guangchong. Two voices, one in front and one behind, came from Sherdong and the black-robed man holding the short halberd. Now that the northern frontier was full of undercurrents, if one had to pick out a group of trustworthy people, it would be the Blackwater Army who had just returned from the south. They had witnessed the dangers of the elixir of immortality with their own eyes. They hated the elixir of immortality even more than Li Zhong, who had been warned by Lin Yuan in advance. The corners of Zhao Guangchong's mouth curled up slightly. He slowly raised his head, revealing a cold and sharp face. He said in a cold voice, "President Shi, since you've already recognized me, are you still not going to surrender?" Their eyes met. In an instant, too much information had been revealed. Sherdong's expression changed several times. Soon, he thought of the new black market that had recently opened outside Shunning City. At first, Li Zhong had personally asked him to relax the inspection of that place. He thought that someone had used Li Zhong's connections to open a black market, so he didn't take it to heart. However, not long after, the spies of the Association of the Demon Emperor sent back a message. The elixir of immortality had appeared in the new black market. In fact, according to the rules of the northern frontier, Sherdong should have gotten off work and gone home. However, he still stayed at the headquarters of the Association of the Demon Emperor, preparing to lead his assault team to sweep the new black market and destroy all the elixirs of immortality stored in it. However, before those action team members reported, the Blackwater Army came to him first. Li Zhong's influence was definitely not that great. In the northern frontier, there was only one person who could mobilize the Blackwater Army. Thinking of this, Sherdong's heart skipped a beat. Had he been exposed? What the f***ck? What the hell? He had always been merciless in his attacks on the elixirs of immortality. Even Luo Su, his sworn enemy, had been keeping an eye on him, but Luo Su did not find any fault with him. Even now, when the embroidered uniform guards thoroughly investigated the local authorities and organizations in the northern frontier, they borrowed part of the list from the Association of the Demon Emperor, and then began to secretly arrest the members of the Umbrella. How was it that after Su Nan was caught, it had only been a day, and he had been exposed? Was it the Dragon King's test, or Sherdong's mind was racing, and his expression kept changing? After a long time, he sighed slightly. "Are you ready to give up resistance, President Shi?" Zhao Guangchong licked his dry tongue, and his expression was somewhat playful. Chapter 577. Voidy, kill him. Sherdong waved his right hand. His expression didn't change at all. He didn't know whether Lin Yuan deliberately built a new black market to circulate the elixir of immortality in order to test them, or had he really discovered that he was also a drug user and one of the 4 people in charge of the elixir of immortality. Sherdong didn't know that, but he didn't dare to take the risk. As one of Lin Yuan's sharp knives, Sherdong didn't know much about Lin Yuan, but he was terrified of him. That man was a saint on the inside and a king on the outside to the people of the northern frontier. He had used all kinds of gentle methods and policies to pacify the people. Although he was only a demon beast, the people under his rule were very happy. As for the people in power in the northern frontier, their methods were not inferior to those of the old emperors who had been in charge of a dynasty for many years. They walked side by side with the tyrannical way to check and balance all the factions. They had beaten their subordinates into obedience and didn't dare to have any improper thoughts. If they did something a little bit out of line, it would lead to a very cruel strike. If his conscience was clear, Sherdong could put on the shackles and go to see Lin Yuan. But it was a pity that Sherdong didn't have a clear conscience. Zhao Guangchong's expression changed slightly when he heard Sherdong's words. He growled, "Sherdong, don't you know what will happen if you continue to resist? Or do you think you have the ability to fight your way out of Shunning City under the blockade of the Northern Battlefront Army and the Blackwater Army, and then fight your way through the northern battlefield to get a chance of survival?" As one of the valiant generals under Lin Yuan, Zhao Guangchong had fought with various rebel forces in the south during this period of time, fought with the cultists, and even fought with the demons of the Jade Lake Immortal Palace. He could be regarded as an existence that he had seen and eaten. He didn't know the background of this Voidy who was protecting Sherdong, but he was sure that this Voidy was very powerful. He couldn't tell what cultivation level this Voidy was, but he was sure that this Voidy was very powerful. Judging from the way this Voidy blocked Sherdong's sky halberd with his knife, this Voidy was obviously a master. Voidy did not seem to have any loyalty to the northern frontier. The moment Zhao Guangchong finished speaking, Voidy pulled out his blade and took a step forward, swinging his blade at Zhao Guangchong's head. Zhao Guangchong's expression changed. He also pulled back his short weapon, the square heaven halberd, to block Voidy's aggressive blade. At the same time, he tapped his foot and the two of them quickly pulled apart the distance between them. "Humph!" Sherdong snorted coldly. His face was a little gloomy. He reached under the table and groped for a moment. With a rumbling sound, the bookshelf behind him slowly opened to reveal a secret passage. Sherdong's gaze paused on Voidy for a moment. A look of regret flashed across his eyes. Then, he walked into the secret passage without looking back. As Sherdong walked further and further away, the bookshelf once again closed with a rumbling sound. Then, a loud sound rang out. Zhao Guangchong's expression changed. Whether it was the loud sound just now or the shaking ground under his feet, it all told him that Sherdong had abandoned this subordinate called Voidy. He decisively retreated and destroyed the entrance to the secret passage. Even if they wanted to chase after him, they couldn't. "I die. You leave." Voidy gripped the hilt of his blade with both hands and struck a strange pose in front of Zhao Guangchong. His eyes didn't move at all. It was as if he wasn't an existence abandoned by Shi Dong. Zhao Guangchong was extremely angry. Blood rushed to his head, causing his face to turn red. However, at this moment, he was so angry that he laughed and growled, "What a pity! Only death awaits you if you help the wicked." At the same time, the same scene. It happened at the Embroidered Uniform Guard Yamen, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, and other organizations in the northern frontier. It also happened at the Qiao family and the Shui family, which had a good relationship with Lin Yuan. The Black Water Army, which rarely showed its edge in front of the world, suddenly erupted with extremely terrifying power at this moment. It almost destroyed the defensive forces of these places as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It directly faced those who held power in their hands. However, there weren't many people like Shi Dong who chose to resist. Perhaps it was because he didn't have a backup plan. Perhaps it was because he had a clear conscience. Or perhaps it was because he still didn't understand Lin Yuan well enough. However, tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Most people didn't know what Lin Yuan's actions meant, but the governor of the Embroidered Uniform Guard, Luo Su, clearly knew. When Qin Yu of the Black Water Army brought the Black Water Archer Battalion to the Embroidered Uniform Guard Yamen, he found that it was still operating as usual. When the Embroidered Uniform Guard guarding the door saw them, there wasn't the slightest surprise in his eyes. He didn't even wait for Qin Yu to speak before he cooperatively opened the door of the Embroidered Uniform Guard Yamen. Luo Su was sitting upright in the front yard of the Yamen. In front of him was a pile of charcoal. He was using a copper basin to heat raw mutton. When various seasonings rose and fell in the copper basin, they stirred up waves of red chili oil. As Luo Su heated the meat, he hummed an unknown northern frontier song. In his hand was a small bowl filled with seasonings. He looked extremely satisfied. Seeing Qin Yu lead people to surround the Embroidered Uniform Guard Yamen, Luo Su still didn't have any expression of surprise or fear. He even grinned and revealed 2 rows of white teeth at Qin Yu. He smiled and said, "I've waited for quite a while. I thought you would come by dinner time. I didn't expect it to drag on until night time. I haven't even eaten. Does Camp Qin want to eat with us? We'll leave after we're full." "You're not surprised and not afraid?" Qin Yu was a little dumbfounded. Even his voice was a little stuttering. He didn't know how to describe his feelings at the moment. After all, it was one of the 2 major spy agencies on the northern frontier. Like the Star Class, they were all personally trained by the Dragon King. In terms of the degree of elite, the Black Water Army might not be comparable to the Embroidered Uniform Guard. After all, the Embroidered Uniform Guard was also a military establishment. It was just that it was more in the direction of intelligence and didn't have any superior troop. The only thing that the Black Water Army could be stronger than the other side was probably the equipment prepared by Lin Yuan himself. He originally thought that it would be a fierce battle. In the end, the other side didn't have any intention of making a move. They were even eating hot pot and singing as if nothing had happened. "I, Luo Su, didn't do anything wrong. Why should I be afraid?" Luo Su rolled his eyes at Qin Yu and said with a smile, "When I meet the Dragon King later, I might even be able to taste the tea made from the fey branches and leaves of the northern frontier prince's residence. It's just nice to eat some greasy food to wash off the oil later." Tonight, Lin Yuan wanted to meet many people. Some people were simply chatting and drinking tea. But some people probably wouldn't have the chance to drink tea in their lifetime. Qin Yu handed the composite bow in his hand to the adjutant beside him. As he reached out to take off his wrist armor, he stepped forward and asked with a hint of ridicule, "You didn't poison the meat, right?" Chapter 578. I don't even have enough meat for myself. We are only 60% full. We don't have much to share with your soldiers." Luo Su rolled his eyes and said helplessly, "Anyone with a bit of information would know that the members of the Black Water Army have the qualifications to be a general in any army. Even if you, a major, were to be taken down, the command system would not collapse. Wouldn't it be crazy for me to poison them? I'll be struck by lightning for wasting food." By the time she finished speaking, Qin Yu had already walked up to Luo Su. She reached out and took off her helmet. A smile also bloomed on her face. Then she lowered her voice and said, "Then I'm sorry. Governor Luo treated me to mutton, but I still have to put Governor Luo in shackles. If Commander Luo can come out of the mansion in one piece, I'll take the time to arrange for you." "Well said, well said." Luo Su laughed. His eyes, which were exposed outside the bandage, curved like two crescent moons. Tonight was destined to be full of blood. But for someone like him, it couldn't be better. Although the embroidered uniform guard had been established for a long time, it was still not as good as the local government in the northern frontier. Those officials had to give face to the embroidered uniform guard, but they didn't have to be afraid of the embroidered uniform guard. But after tonight, most of the troublesome people wouldn't exist. If they were lucky, even Sherdong's old rival would be defeated today. After all, the embroidered uniform guard was not to be trifled with. What Sherdong knew, Luo Su knew. What Sherdong didn't know, Luo Su knew. For example, Sherdong only knew that it was Li Zhong who told him about the new black market outside. But Luo Su knew that the merchants selling the immortal medicine in the new black market were all secretly brought back by Lin Yuan from the demon beast forest. And after Lin Yuan returned to the mansion in the northern frontier, the Black Water Army, which had been lurking in the northern frontier and keeping an eye on the northern battlefront army, was in full operation. A large number of elites were mobilized to the vicinity of Shunning City. Obviously, something big was going to happen. How to describe this feeling? It was like drinking a bottle of cold beer in the dog days of summer. There was a sense of comfort from head to toe. East City of Shunning City, Qiao family mansion. With a cold expression, Zhang Xiuzhu stretched his limbs, then slowly drew out the blade at his waist. With a gloomy face, he looked at the tightly shut door of the Qiao clan and growled, "From the moment I give the order, within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, break through the Qiao clan and capture Qiao Yilan alive. If you fail the mission, your training will be doubled and your meals will be halved." Roar. A woo! Wolf howls could be heard. All the people who came with Zhang Xiuzhu were dressed in black. They carried crossbows in their left hands and long sabers in their right hand. Daggers hung from their calves. They carried a black box on their backs, which contained all kinds of special tools. Whether it was tools for climbing over walls, picking locks, or assembling parts for long-range sniping equipment, or even 3 days' worth of marching rations, they were all stuffed into the box. These items and the box weighed close to 600 kilograms, but when they were carried by these men in black, it was as if they were nothing. Not a single one of them even bent over from the weight. Don't accept ye. The number of members was unknown. The average realm was level 1 of the Heaven Star Border realm. This was a humanoid army created and trained by Lin Yuan. Apart from their human appearance, their physical fitness was no worse than that of demonic beasts. That was to say, Zhang Xiuzhu and Yu Dingchen had a good foundation. Otherwise, if they were placed in the Night Buyao, they might not even be as good as the new recruit. This time, the mission of attacking the Qiao clan was given to Zhang Xiuzhu by Yi Bilan, not because he was strong, but because Zhang Xiuzhu was a talented commander who had been trained in the Northern Frontier Military Academy. It would be a waste not to use him. If it were other armies, even the Black Water Army, they wouldn't have the confidence to say that they could break through the Qiao clan in 30 minutes. But the Night Buyao could. Weren't they just a few Heaven Dipper realm disciples of the Qiao clan? The Night Buyao had 600 people, all of whom were in the Heaven Dipper realm. Although they weren't proficient in spells, their physical fitness was comparable to that of demonic beasts. Moreover, they didn't have too many human weaknesses. Unless their heads were chopped off, their spines were broken, or large amounts of internal organs were spilled out, the rest of the penetrating and slashing wounds weren't fatal to them. Of course, it wasn't without cost for Lin Yuan to train such an army. First, the actual number of people in this army was actually less than that of the Blackwater army. Second, the strength of this army was all piled up by Lin Yuan's attribute points. Not only did he spend all his stock, but he also owed a lot of attribute points to the members of the Night Buyao. He could only gradually make up for it in the future. After handing over the task, Zhang Xiuzhu nodded slightly to Yu Dingchen, who was guarding the gate of the Qiao clan. Yu Dingchen, who received the signal from his superior, nodded slightly, quickly retreated about 30 meters, and then crushed a black cube in his hand. Boom! Following a loud noise, the gate of the Qiao clan, which was more than 10 meters tall, split into pieces and shot out in all directions. The members of the Night Buyao who were guarding the gate didn't change their expressions. They waved their swords and chopped down the pieces of wood that were shot at them. They directly raised their left hands and continuously shot arrows into the Qiao clan's courtyard. After a round of continuous shooting, the dust and smoke just happened to dissipate. The members of the Night Buyao were unharmed. The Qiao clan's courtyard was filled with black crossbow arrows and hundreds of corpses that were almost shot into sieves. The surroundings were dark red pools of blood. A whoa! Zhang Xiuzhu raised his head and let out another wolf howl. The members of the Night Buyao howled in response. They threw down the empty crossbow in their left hands and hit the normal crossbow that needed to be reloaded again. Only then did they brandish their swords and kill inside the Qiao clan's courtyard. Those frightened, shocked, and angry gazes were ignored by the wolf cubs of the Night Buyao. They were like tigers in a flock of sheep. The servants and guards of the Qiao clan were like wheat in autumn, harvested in an instant. This situation continued until some of the young and strong members of the Qiao clan stepped in. Only then did the one-sided massacre end. However, the Qiao clan was still at a disadvantage. Their formation was constantly retreating, as if it would collapse at any time. Who are you people? How dare you commit murder in Shunning City? An angry roar sounded. Qiao Yilin strode out from the backyard with a gloomy face. The head of the Qiao clan, Qiao Yilin, took the elixir of immortality and violated the laws of the northern frontier. The Dragon King ordered us to arrest you and bring you to justice. Yu Dingchen's expression didn't change at all. He coldly looked at Qiao Yilin. As his voice fell, several members of the Night Buyao immediately brandished their swords and forced their opponents to retreat. They stepped forward and rushed toward Qiao Yilin, who had just walked out. There was even a bloodthirsty red light in their eyes. Chapter 579. Turning his hand to create clouds, turning his hand to create rain. These 8 words were vividly displayed on Lin Yuan. The Council of the Demon Emperor, the embroidered uniform guards, the Qiao family, the Shui family, and even the organizations and government offices of the northern frontier in name, under Lin Yuan's command, did not have the strength to fight. Except for a few who chose to surrender and those who were willing to accept the investigation with a clear conscience, all those who resisted did not last long before they were completely wiped out. The one that lasted the longest was the Qiao family. 2/3 of the incense stick had been burned away. The older generation and the middle generation of the Qiao family were practically all dead. Only a few young members of the Qiao family who did not participate in the battle were left behind, trembling among the old, weak, women, and children. Of course, 4 people like Qiao Yilin who had been called out by Lin Yuan, although their injuries were not light, they were still kept alive. They were sent to the princely estate of the northern frontier to await further punishment. As for those who had not been called out, they were either detained or killed. Their names and titles were not asked. The Black Water Army, Yi Buzhao, and a portion of the embroidered uniform guards, under Lin Yuan's command, were like emotionless and cold machines. They perfectly carried out all the orders that Lin Yuan gave. 4 hours later, Lin Yuan, Qin Yu, Li Zhong, and Zhang Xiuzhu were sitting in the front hall of the princely estate. Zhao Guangchong was kneeling on one knee in the center of the front hall. He lowered his head, not daring to look directly at Lin Yuan. Outside, the wounded that had resisted Lin Yuan's summons were strewn everywhere. There were also some people who had also been called out but had chosen to accept the summons. Although these people were kneeling on the ground, when they saw the wounded, they also rejoiced incomparably. Zhao Guangchong did not dare to look at Lin Yuan, nor did he dare to turn his head to look at the people who had been summoned, because he had discovered that there were many people carrying out the mission tonight. And besides him, everyone else had perfectly completed their mission. For example, Qin Yu, who had a good relationship with him, had not only brought Luo Su back intact, he had even eaten a mutton hot pot. Looking at Qin Yu, and then looking at him. If you compare goods, you'll throw them away. If you compare people, you'll die. Shi Dong was the vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor, and his subordinates were no less powerful than Luo Su. He and Qin Yu were both battalion commanders of the Black Water Army. In fact, his men were the type that specialized in close combat. In this kind of battle where the outcome of the summons was uncertain, he and his men would have the advantage. In the end, because of his heroism, he had left his men outside while he infiltrated the council of the Demon Emperor, intending to capture Shi Dong. In the end, Shi Dong had swaggered away. Although Shi Dong had already prepared a backup plan, he still had to take full responsibility. For example, if he had led his men to charge in, and Shi Dong had escaped through the secret passage, his responsibility would not be great. He could even participate in the subsequent pursuit of Shi Dong to atone for his crimes. Because no one had expected Shi Dong to build a secret passage in his office, and at the same time, to raise a powerful men of sacrifice to protect him. Therefore, this kind of mistake was acceptable. But he had rushed in alone and was stopped by Shi Dong's men of sacrifice. He had to take full responsibility for Shi Dong's escape, because this was the result of him acting rashly and alerting the enemy. Some people might even think that even if Zhao Guangchong had brought a few more men, Shi Dong might not have been able to escape. The result was the same, but the punishment was completely different. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes fell on Zhao Guangchong, and he felt his eyelids twitching. Logically speaking, he still liked Zhao Guangchong very much. After all, he was a student that he had personally taught. His cultivation, courage, and talent were all top-notch. In the future, he would definitely become a fierce general like Lu Fengxian, who could take on thousands of soldiers and horses. But he had forgotten that the more this kind of person was, the more likely they were to have a sense of heroism. And the stronger they were, the more obvious this symptom would be. For example, in the history of his previous life, this type of general was almost always obstinate and self-opinionated. At the very least, they would suffer a defeat, and at the very worst, they might even give themselves up because of their own heroism. Lord Dragon King, the secret passage has been excavated. An embroidered uniform guard wearing a flying fish robe strode into the front hall and said in a deep voice, "But the secret passage is very complicated. Not long after walking down the main road, we saw a fork in the road. The deeper we go, the more forks there are. And there are many places with traps. Some of the secret passages can only be found after walking for a long time. We asked people from the Ministry of Works to take a look. They said that there are many forks in this secret passage, and there are at least 3 paths to survival. But as for which 3 paths, we still need time to think." When the embroidered uniform guard finished his report, Zhao Guangchong's face became more and more unsightly. Not long ago, Gao Buzhan captured Wei River City, but because of a secret passage, he let hundreds of thousands of Shen Lin Jun's reserve troops escape. As a result, he became the laughingstock of the Northern Frontier Army. Even Gao Buzhan himself found it difficult to fall out with the people who talked about this matter. Zhao Guangchong had also ridiculed Gao Buzhan with others for being so close to the door, but he didn't expect that not long after, he would follow in Gao Buzhan's footstep. No, it was even worse than Gao Buzhan. Gao Buzhan captured Wei River City, killed most of the Shen Lin Jun's reserve troops, and only let some survivors escape. At most, it would be more troublesome to clean up the mess. But when it came to him, he only killed one of Shi Dong's guards and let Shi Dong swagger away. Even if he could walk out of the Northern Frontier Palace alive today, he would replace Gao Buzhan in the future and become the new laughingstock of the Northern Frontier Army. Don't bother, I know where that old guy slipped away. Luo Su, who was kneeling in the front yard, yawned. His slightly hoarse voice sounded, faintly revealing a bit of excitement. Li Zhong frowned slightly and asked with a dark face, "You know that Shi Dong built a secret passage in his office, and even know where these secret passages lead to. Why didn't you tell us in advance?" "You're asking me?" Luo Su seemed to be very dissatisfied with Li Zhong's words in the previous meeting. He raised his chin and said contemptuously, "His Highness has been boldly and decisively reorganizing the palace guards. Anyone with a discerning eye knows what's going on. I thought that His Highness was blind outside of Shunning City, but I didn't expect that His Highness is not omniscient and omnipotent in Shunning City." "You." Li Zhong's face changed and he growled. Luo Su didn't intend to leave him any face at all. He did play a dishonorable role in the Immortal Medicine incident, but he definitely didn't stand on the opposite side of the Northern Frontier. It was just that there were two intelligence agencies in the Northern Frontier, the Association of the Demon Emperor and the Genie Guard. Everything had to be fought both openly and secretly. If this continued, everyone in the Northern Frontier would be in danger, so changes had to be made. The simplest way was to continue the balance of power and set up a third intelligence agency to balance the association of the Demon Emperor and the Genie Guard. He didn't expect that Luo Su even knew about his secret movements. Chapter 580. Luo Su did not give Li Zhong any face. But this was not just directed at Li Zhong alone. Most of the people present felt a chill run down their spines. The terror of the embroidered uniform guard was only revealed now. In the past, everyone felt that the embroidered uniform guard was just SOSO. As the intelligence agency appointed by Lin Yuan, the embroidered uniform guard had countless enviable privileges. It was also because of these privileges that the Association of the Demon Emperor, which was the embroidered uniform guard's opponent, had strengthened a lot. But in fact, not many people took the embroidered uniform guard seriously. Strictly speaking, although the embroidered uniform guard had recruited and trained a batch of newcomers since its establishment, the main force was still the batch that Lin Yuan had selected from the Association of the Demon Emperor. Apart from a change of uniform, they looked no different from the Association of the Demon Emperor. Without the support of the Association of the Demon Emperor's basic personnel scattered around the Northern Frontier, the embroidered uniform guard seemed to have weakened a lot because of this. After losing this support, it was obviously impossible for the embroidered uniform guard to cultivate their own spies overnight. Some people even asserted that if they lost the support of the Northern Frontier Prince's residence, the embroidered uniform guard would be turned into a mere figurehead by the Association of the Demon Emperor at any time. There were also people who sneered at Luo Su's cruel methods, feeling that Luo Su was just SOSO. Without such torture methods, they might not be able to get any information. But at this moment, Luo Su's strength was like a resounding slap on everyone's face. The Demon Emperor was very powerful? Unknowingly, the embroidered uniform guard, had already carried out strict surveillance on Sherdong. While Sherdong was still fighting with Luo Su might have already figured out the color of Sherdong's underwear, the number of documents on his desk, the contents of the documents, and the suggestions to deal with them. He even built tunnels in Sherdong's office. Luo Su also knew where these tunnels led to. But what about Sherdong? He knew nothing about Luo Su. In other words, no one knew anything about Luo Su. In their hearts, Luo Su was still the image of a ruthless official who only knew how to extort confessions through torture. If not for this sudden turn of events, who would have thought that the ruthlessness and cruelty Luo Su showed was just a facade, or it was just the side he wanted people to see? As for those who thought that the embroidered uniform guards were completely supported by the prince's residence in the northern frontier, they felt their faces burning. Isn't Li Zhong powerful enough? He was the hero in the eyes of the people of the northern frontier, and was the most suitable existence to be the king of the northern frontier. Even Lin Yuan had a whole new level of respect for him. He also put aside the authority of the king of the northern frontier. As long as Lin Yuan didn't say anything, Li Zhong could directly make the decisions for the entire northern frontier. But what about Luo Su? He directly investigated Li Zhong, and even knew all of Li Zhong's little movements during this period of time. It should be known that they were now at war. The embroidered uniform guards, who were nominally part of the military system, had transferred a lot of manpower to the battlefield. This was already the weakest time for the embroidered uniform guards. But under these circumstances, Luo Su was still able to keep an eye on Li Zhong and Sherdong. Just based on this point alone, there were too many problems. At this moment, even the northern frontier officials and aristocratic family heads, who weren't involved in the Elixir of Immortality project, couldn't help but gasp. The scene was like a swarm of snakes coming out. The entire front yard of the prince's residence was filled with hissing sounds. They were a little panicked. Although they didn't have any problems with this matter, sitting in such a high position, who could keep absolutely clean? Even if it didn't violate the laws of the northern frontier, it was not uncommon for them to open the door wide for their own juniors, and hand over some lucrative projects to their own family members to manage. These old and rotten things were unavoidable at any time, and could be considered as behavior that everyone tacitly agreed to. But this tacit agreement obviously wouldn't appear on Luo Su and Lin Yuan. A ruthless and tyrannical king. A cruel and ruthless official who didn't recognize his own family. When this pair of master and servant worked together, even if they wanted to bloody clean up the entire northern frontier, they could find countless legal and reasonable solutions. If nothing unexpected happens, Sherdong is now under arrest. In less than half an hour, he will be sent to the prince's residence. Just as everyone was shocked, Luo Su once again dropped a nuclear bomb. It was as if all this was still within Luo Su's expectations. Just as he had long guessed that this day would come on the northern frontier, and had long guessed Lin Yuan's response, he had also guessed that Sherdong, under such circumstances, would not come to the prince's residence in the northern frontier to accept the investigation as calmly as he did. Therefore, he could leisurely eat mutton pot in his yamen and wait for Qin Yu to come, or he could brazenly cut off Sherdong's escape route. Li Zhong stood in front of Luo Su with his hands behind his back, his eyes full of complex emotions. After a long time, he said with a dark face, "So, I underestimated Commander Luo before." Luo Su's bandaged face curved. Anyone could see that Luo Su was smiling, and it was an incomparably mocking smile. "Even if the prince thinks highly of me, it won't change anything. The methods of the embroidered uniform guard are not something you can understand. Unless you don't recognize your own family, you have no secrets in the eyes of the embroidered uniform guard." Luo Su's voice gradually rose, his tone full of ridicule and sarcasm. In fact, the dispute between the two major intelligence agencies in the northern frontier had already drawn the curtains when the embroidered uniform guard was established. The outcome had long been decided. What kind of person was Luo Su? He was poisoned by the flames of purgatory. If it weren't for the existence of Lin Yuan and Mo Luo, Luo Su would have long been dominated by the ruthlessness and darkness in his heart and become a purgatory demon like Fong Tian, whose whereabouts were unknown. Although he didn't take the elixir of immortality, Lin Yuan was his elixir of immortality. After leaving Lin Yuan, no matter where Luo Su went or who he relied on, the outcome wouldn't change in the slightest. Either he would die a violent death or go crazy. What was the composition of the embroidered uniform guard? The characters trained in the same batch as Yi Bus Ho naturally weren't ordinary people of flesh and blood. Instead, they were humanoid monsters created by Lin Yuan with the help of the system's power. Still, they weren't necessarily loyal to Lin Yuan, but innate factors had already determined that they couldn't harm Lin Yuan and had to rely on Lin Yuan to grow. Therefore, among the many factions in the northern frontier, only Yi Bus Ho and the embroidered uniform guard were completely loyal to Lin Yuan. Because Lin Yuan didn't just create these two troops, he was also the father and god of all the members of these two troops. How could a disloyal organization that relied on Lin Yuan for glory, splendor, wealth, and glory fight with Lin Yuan's direct subordinates to the death? Chapter 581. Disregard all family? Keep strangers away? Who could do this? No one would be stupid enough to doubt Luo Su's words. Perhaps some people would think that no matter how powerful the embroidered uniform guard was, they could at most make the inconspicuous peddlers on the street or the servants of those with power become their spies and eyes. Then I won't use these people, won't treat them as my confidant. The family and organization I belong to are completely managed by the descendants of the family. Could it be that they would disregard the interests of the entire family and be of one mind with the embroidered uniform guard? The answer was yes. The interests of the family were the interests of the family, and personal interests were personal interests. When personal interests were greater, no one would refuse the temptation of this demon, and would gladly endure it. For example, the brothers of the same generation in a large family, no matter how close they appeared to be, were still competitors and threats to each other behind the scenes. This was because there were only so many upper echelons in a family and an organization, and the positions of absolute power in these upper echelons were even fewer. If I told your scandal to the embroidered uniform guard, the embroidered uniform guard would act against you. Even if you didn't die, you would lose a layer of skin, and even lose the qualifications to inherit the position of family head, family elder, and other positions of power. Even if I am inferior to you in every aspect, I can still suppress you. In front of absolute interests, even family members were not worthy of trust. The drama of father and son killing each other, brothers fighting against each other, existed no matter where it was. Even if the person had no intention of harming the tiger, it was difficult to avoid the tiger harming the person's heart. However, in this situation where he didn't trust anyone and had to do everything by himself, it was difficult for him to achieve anything big. As long as Luo Su was here, the embroidered uniform guard was here, and everyone had to lower their heads. Because of the existence of this pair of eyes, no one could make any small movements under Lin Yuan's eyes. Let's not talk about digressions. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids, and his gaze swept over the faces of his subordinates who had extremely ugly expressions. He said indifferently, "I heard that everyone is particularly interested in the elixir of immortality that the prince's residence had previously issued a notice and strictly prohibited?" As his voice fell, many people's expressions immediately became unnatural. Who present was not a cultivator? Nearly 90% of them did not cultivate to pursue the great Tao. Instead, they hoped to become stronger and live longer. Only then would they be able to grasp more authority for a longer period of time. Most of them spent more on a single meal than an ordinary northern frontier citizen could earn in 5 or 10 years. With such wealth and power in their hands, who would be willing to miss the opportunity to live forever? How many people would take the northern frontier prince's mansion's announcement to boycott the immortal elixir seriously? Even the Qiao family, who had always been the leader of the aristocratic families in the northern frontier, had unhesitatingly stood by Lin Yuan's side when he suppressed the aristocratic families in the northern frontier. Even the Qiao family couldn't resist this temptation. As the head of the family, Qiao Yilin was one of the first to take the elixir of immortality. What's more, the heads of the small and medium-sized aristocratic families, who relied on the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce for a living, were dissatisfied with Lin Yuan and Li Zhong. They thought that they could outwardly comply with Lin Yuan's orders but inwardly disobey him and not take Lin Yuan's orders seriously. After all, most of the officials in the northern frontier were members of aristocratic families. If Lin Yuan left them, the entire administrative structure of the northern frontier would be paralyzed. Therefore, the aristocratic families of the northern frontier had taken action several times. Only a portion of the leaders were killed. The remaining aristocratic families were only warned and punished. So this time they still had this thought. Even the aristocratic family heads who had hesitated at the start joined the ranks of those who took the elixir of immortality when they realized more and more people were taking it. Then they realized they had been tricked. This was not the elixir of immortality at all, but a fatal poison that would make them wish they were dead. Then now, do you have a clear understanding of the elixir of immortality? Lin Yuan asked with a mocking gaze as though he didn't see the expressions of the people in the courtyard. The courtyard remained silent, but everyone's expressions had turned from ugly to gloomy. Still ignoring everyone's expressions, Lin Yuan said slowly, "Although we haven't worked together for long, you have still contributed to the northern frontier. You can be considered my trusted subordinate. First of all, I have to admit that your idea of the law not punishing the masses is not bad. Although there are no exact statistics, I can be sure that more than 80% of the aristocratic families in the northern frontier have taken the elixir of immortality. If I start the cleanup operation on you, the administrative structure of the northern frontier will be completely paralyzed. At that time, everyone will be very sad." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, everyone's ugly expressions gradually turned for the better. They thought that they were going to visit the gates of hell today. Now, it seemed that this Dragon King was very easy to talk to. "Did you think that I was going to take it lightly and just teach you a lesson?" Lin Yuan grinned and suddenly changed the topic. He said in a cold voice, "I can tell you responsibly that all of you who have taken the elixir of immortality are dead for sure." Everyone raised their heads and stared at Lin Yuan with complicated gazes. There was shock, resentment, and even relief. In truth, most of them were not naive enough to think that after committing such a monstrous crime, Lin Yuan would still let them leave the northern frontier prince's estate alive. Most of those who admitted their wrongs were even prepared to tell everything they knew in exchange for Lin Yuan's leniency. And the condition for this leniency was that Lin Yuan would handle this matter to the extreme. Killing them would be enough, but sparing their families and descendants. But Lin Yuan's words at the beginning had ignited the hope of countless people. But soon, with just a few words, Lin Yuan had personally crushed this thread of hope. At this moment, it was best to describe them as hopeless. "From your eyes, you seem to hate me?" No one could clearly see Lin Yuan's movements. It was as if in the blink of an eye, Lin Yuan had appeared in front of a scion of a noble clan. They all knew this person. He came from a large noble clan. Whether it was the northern frontier of the past or the current northern frontier, this person had considerable influence. Some time ago, the Northern Frontier Academy had even sent him an invitation, hoping that he could become an instructor at the Northern Frontier Academy and help the Northern Frontier Academy train the commoners. In truth, the opportunity to become an instructor at the Northern Frontier Academy would very rarely fall upon a scion of a noble clan. After all, everyone was of a different class. If these scions of noble clans were to teach commoners the way of becoming an official, the Northern Frontier Academy would be worried that they would take the opportunity to cultivate henchmen and corrupt the atmosphere. Unless this person was truly capable, so capable that he could make the Northern Frontier Academy ignore these drawbacks. Chapter 582. I just don't understand why the Dragon King is wasting his breath on people like us who are about to die. Under the pressure of Lin Yuan's dragon might, that person was unwilling to lower his head, but he couldn't help but avert his gaze, not daring to look directly at Lin Yuan. He had a good background and excellent abilities. If the elixir of immortality hadn't happened, he would have become one of the most powerful figures in the Northern Frontier. He would have even been able to train a large number of disciples from the Northern Frontier Academy. In the future, his descendants would also have had the opportunity to join the embroidered uniform guard. Just thinking about it, one could imagine how bright his future would have been. But now there was nothing left. He didn't even know if he would be able to leave the Northern Frontier alive. I really don't need to waste my breath on you. I know very well what the elixir of immortality you took is. From the very beginning, I was very opposed to this kind of thing appearing on the Northern Frontier. But unfortunately, you, who only have interests in your eyes, once again failed to live up to this king's kindness. Not only did you take the elixir of immortality, you even became an accomplice of the Sky Demon, a member of the so-called protective umbrella. Do you think that as long as you act like a good dog for the Sky Demon, he will give you the antidote, or give you the real elixir of immortality and accept you as a member of the Sky Demon? If that's the case, do you think you can sit back and relax? Unfortunately, as far as I know, those cultivators who took the real elixir of immortality didn't seem to have a good ending. Not long ago, those who took the elixir of immortality, the Jade Lake Immortal Palace's signature elixir of immortality, were all annihilated in the Wei River battle. Do you want me to find a few demon sealing bottles and have them tell you how they are doing now? Lin Yuan's smile and voice were full of malice. Yes, whether it was those who took the blood of the ancestor or those who took the defective product, in the eyes of the Sky Demon, they were nothing but chess pieces. As long as the conditions were right, they could be discarded at any time. Gulp. That person swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His gaze began to wander as if he couldn't focus. I think you might have misunderstood me a little. Of course, it's also my fault for not being too detailed. Today, I didn't call you here to deal with you, but to say something from the bottom of my heart. I didn't have the chance in the past, and even if I said it, you wouldn't take it seriously. So, I'll take the opportunity today to talk to you. In fact, I didn't intend to kill you. It's obvious that I'm very dissatisfied with you. Because you've made things difficult for me time and time again. Because you think that you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you should be superior to others. You think that all the benefits should belong to you and that you can't suffer any losses. To be honest, I did ask you to hand over your land, but the benefits that the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce brought to you far exceeded the benefits of those lands, right? You can save a lot of money on raising serfs, and you can put more resources into business. You can stimulate the economy of the Northern Frontier. This is beneficial to both the families behind you and the Northern Frontier. Unfortunately, you don't think so. You only think about how much benefits you can get from me. When I need you to contribute, you're not willing. Even if this contribution reduces your burden and increases your benefits, it's still the same. Because you're used to this model. Whether it's the Wanjian dynasty or the Shenwu dynasty, The rulers are like fish on a chopping board for you to cut. Because you know very well that the so-called royal family is essentially no different from you. They're just the most powerful family among all the aristocratic families. But a good tiger can't fight against a pack of wolves. No matter how strong they are, they can't fight against all the aristocratic families. This model continued until I appeared. I'm like an alien who broke your foundation and forced you to kneel. I made you feel that your power is slipping away bit by bit and it's getting worse day by day. So even if you work for me for a month and can earn resources that you can only earn in a year or even a few years, you're still not satisfied with me. Because you know that these good days won't last for long. Because in this kind of environment, once there's a problem with your younger generation's ability, your entire family will quickly decline. You're worried about the rise of the humble families and the decline of your own family. But you don't seem to have noticed that while you're feeling sorry for yourself and doing everything you can to stop me, there are still many people who are training themselves and nurturing their younger generation so that they and their families can be better and stronger in the new era. Be it human beings or demon beasts, none of them could escape from the law of nature where the strong preyed on the weak. It was just that the nature of civilization had made our bloody methods softer, darker, and harder to detect. Since ancient times, nobody could escape from the survival of the fittest. You're not used to the new environment, yet you want to stop the arrival of the new era. Doing this is no different from seeking your own death. I'm only helping you to die earlier so that you can reincarnate. Even if you succeed, the one who loses in the end is me. In the future, if your family and your younger generation don't change, they still won't be able to escape the fate of decline and extinction. Lin Yuan rarely spoke at length, or it could be said that he rarely wasted time. But when these words were spoken, many people lowered their heads. Their eyes even began to turn red, as if they were about to cry. The younger generation of aristocratic families were indeed born with a golden spoon in their mouths, but that didn't mean that all of them were good-for-nothings. They clearly knew that the changes brought about by Lin Yuan weren't bad. Although it offended the foundation of their existence, if they were willing to change, they could live a better life. It was just that they had adapted to the days where they didn't need to work hard to be a superior person. Why would they be willing to put in the effort? The ones who were wrong weren't them, and it wasn't Lin Yuan. It was just that Lin Yuan's appearance made this change come too quickly and too suddenly. The people who were sleeping didn't want to be woken up, so they tried to resist, but they found that in front of Lin Yuan, they were as weak as a joke. Dragon King. I was wrong. I hope that you can give us another chance. We will definitely. That person slowly lowered his head, and there seemed to be tears in his eyes. Although he knew very well that everything was too late at this moment, he still wanted to apologize to Lin Yuan. He should have had a good future, and become a person above the clouds in this era-changing storm. But because of a single mistake, everything was gone. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Lin Yuan opened his mouth again, interrupting his speech. He said indifferently, "I've said it before, I never intended to destroy you. The ones who walked the path of death are yourselves. The ones who will punish you are also yourselves." Chapter 583. When Lin Yuan's voice fell, a dumbfounded expression appeared on everyone's faces. Lin Yuan spent so much effort to kidnap them here and said so much, but in the end, he still did not intend to let them go. That wasn't unacceptable. But what did he mean by dealing with themselves? Could it be that they could not live with themselves? It was as if they were sick. When you take the elixir of immortality, you will feel very strong and excited, but after the effects of the elixir wear off, you will feel very weak, and your energy will not be able to keep up with your thoughts. You will have to take the elixir of immortality again to barely hold on. Did you not notice that the duration of the elixir is getting shorter and shorter, and the desire in your heart is getting stronger and stronger? There is clearly no problem with the elixir of immortality, but the effect is getting worse and worse? Lin Yuan's tone was still full of malice. He said slowly, "I'll say it again. The one who will deal with you is yourself, not me." Dragon King, you mean, there are other problems with the elixir of immortality? After all, that person was a top figure in the northern frontier, so his reaction was naturally not slow. As someone who had taken the elixir of immortality, he quickly realized that Lin Yuan's words and actions were full of mockery and ridicule, as if even if he let them go, they would not be able to escape death. Your desire is the backlash of the elixir of immortality. The more you take the elixir of immortality, the stronger your desire and the stronger the backlash. When the elixir of immortality is no longer able to stimulate your mind, when the backlash completely destroys your will, you will go crazy. There is no solution to this. If I don't give you the elixir of immortality, you will suffer the backlash and go crazy, and then be killed by me. Even if I give you the elixir of immortality, you will only be able to extend your life. When the side effects become stronger and stronger until the elixir of immortality is no longer able to suppress them, you will still fall into madness, and then be killed by me. In theory, when you first suffer the backlash of the elixir of immortality, if you can rely on your own willpower to withstand it and not choose to continue taking the elixir of immortality, then you can escape from this certain death situation. The more you take the elixir of immortality, the stronger the backlash, and when it far exceeds the limit of your mind, once the elixir of immortality stops, only death will await you. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, answering the other's question. Most of the people present had strange expressions on their faces. As for those who had not consumed the elixir of immortality, they looked as if they had been given a new lease on life. That person's face turned pale as he muttered, "So, that's how it is." Among the crowd, Qiao Yilin, whose face was gloomy, suddenly sneered and said in a cold voice, "Since only death awaits us, why would Dragon King bother to bring us here? If you leave us alone and wipe out the aristocratic families in the northern frontier, wouldn't you be able to make the northern frontier yours?" As the Qiao family that had suffered the greatest loss tonight, Qiao Yilin felt as if his heart was bleeding. More than half of the servants and guards that he had painstakingly nurtured had been killed or injured. Several of his Heaven Dipper realm brothers were either dead or crippled. Even the younger generation had been slaughtered by those monsters dressed in black. The strength that the Qiao family had been so proud of was nothing in the eyes of the other party. If he could have foreseen all of this, Qiao Yilin would have long come to the northern frontier prince's mansion to beg for forgiveness. Why would he put up any unnecessary resistance? As for now, the Qiao family had already become a thing of the past. Beside Qiao Yilin was Shui Yan. As the head of the Shui family, the disciple of the legendary Ma Jun. Under his management, the Shui family was still a small family in the northern frontier. However, no one dared to look down on the Shui family. After all, Shui Yan was Lin Yuan's most trusted aide. Therefore, no one had looked for Shui Yan for the matter of the elixir of immortality. Shui Yan had not taken the initiative to participate in this matter, but he had been paying attention to the development of the situation. At this moment, Shui Yan knew that he had made the right bet again. Looking at the ashen-faced Qiao Yilin, Shui Yan suddenly felt a sense of relief. At the same time, he completely extinguished those thoughts that he should not have had in his mind. The number one aristocratic family in the northern frontier was so weak in the eyes of Lin Yuan, let alone a family like the Shui family that could not be brought up in public. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Qiao Yilin. He sighed and said, "I originally thought that the head of the Qiao family was an outstanding person, but I overestimated you, Qiao Yilin. The Qiao family has already been destroyed. In fact, whether or not you participate in this meeting does not matter much. They are only carrying out my initial orders. After all, who would have thought that the Qiao family would overestimate their own abilities? Qiao Yilin laughed bitterly and did not continue the conversation. The person in front of Lin Yuan was only outstanding in his own abilities. On the other hand, the Qiao family had always valued the cultivation of the younger generation. It could be said that at this stage of the new era, if nothing happened to the Qiao family, everything would be smooth sailing. They would become the #1 aristocratic family in the northern frontier. In the future, they would even be able to compete for the throne of the northern frontier. Similarly, a single slip would cause everlasting sorrow. However, although the people present had been tricked by the elixir of immortality, they were still intelligent people. They had only suffered because they did not understand the nature of the sky demon and the inside story of the elixir of immortality. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, they knew that the main show had begun. The following content would determine the fate of their families. Most of the people present are people who are about to die. I think you all know that if people like you lose control after consuming the elixir, the consequences will be severe. Therefore, in the following period of time, I will continue to provide you with the elixir of immortality so that you can live as people for a while longer. During this period of time, I will arrange for the outstanding students of the Northern Frontier Academy to study by your side. I hope that you will be able to teach these students the ways of being officials in the shortest time possible and then conduct a smooth transfer of power. Once the first batch of students has successfully taken control of the various government offices and organizations under the Northern Frontier, I will gradually open the enrollment of the Northern Frontier Academy so that the children of the aristocratic families can enter the Northern Frontier Academy to learn the core knowledge and participate in the following series of examinations and internship. Those with outstanding ability will always have their own seats, and the vermin will be completely eliminated. Lin Yuan's gaze was clear, and there was no malice in his tone. On the contrary, he was extremely calm. No one was stupid enough to tell Lin Yuan that they could still be saved and wanted to see if they could rely on their own willpower to quit the elixir of immortality. Opening the enrollment requirements of the Northern Frontier Academy was a good thing for them, but it was also a warning. Because if they rejected Lin Yuan's proposal to transfer power, there was no need for this person and the family behind him to exist. The Qiao family had indeed overestimated their capabilities in resisting, but everyone present believed that even if Qiao Yilin were to restrain himself and beg for forgiveness, the Qiao family's fate would not be any better. After all, this was one of the benefits of being a leader. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.